I'll now call the meeting to order and state that we're all present with the exception of Councillor Millette, who is attending to a sick relative. And I'll ask the Director of Corporate Services and City Clerk, Mr. Matt McDonald, to lead us in a moment of reflection.
May we be worthy custodians of all that has been entrusted to us. Help us to be concerned only for what will promote good government. May we bring to our council chamber minds that think and hearts that feel, always having respect for others so that we may serve the people of our city in a helpful manner and for the good of all.
I'd ask that we all remain standing, please. And I have a couple comments to make about the death of Queen Elizabeth II. On behalf of Belleville City Council and the citizens of our city, I'd like to express our deepest sympathies to Queen Elizabeth's family and our deepest appreciation to her for her service. Her death on September the 8th marks the death of the only monarch many Canadians have known. She was the longest reigning British monarch and the longest serving female head of state in history. She has served as Queen of Canada for almost the entire lifetime of our country, half of the entire lifetime of our country. We are grateful for her record-setting length of service to Canada and to the world. The flags at all Belleville municipal buildings will remain lowered until after her funeral on September the 19th. There is a book of condolences here on the 4th floor of City Hall, and we welcome residents to come and sign it between 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Monday to Friday. We will now honor Queen Elizabeth II for 2 minutes with our silence. Thank you. You may be seated. There are no public meetings today. I will ask for a disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Does anyone have anything they want to declare? Seeing none, we'll move to item number 5 on the agenda, the reading and confirmation of minutes for the regular City Council meeting of August the 8th, 2022, the regular in-camera meeting minutes of August the 8th, 2022, the special council meeting minutes of August 24th, and the special in-camera meeting minutes of August 24th, 2022. Moved by Councillor Alsop, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? It's carried. And now we'll move to deputations, and it's my pleasure to welcome to the podium for the first time to our city as the President and Chief Executive Officer of Alexicon Energy, Ms. Indrani Bhutani D'Souza, who will make a deputation to council. Good afternoon and welcome. Just want to push the button. Yeah, perfect.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Just get organized.
Yeah, and while you're getting organized, I'll just point out that along with myself, members from Belleville that serve on the Alexicon Energy and the Alexicon Group and the Alexicon Corporation Board. We've got Murray Angus in the attendance, as well as Doug Parker. Welcome, and I'll let you introduce Stacia.
Thank you. That actually steals my first page of remarks. So in addition to my esteemed board members, Mr. Mayor, I also have with me Stacia Boss here today. Stacia is our Vice President of People, Culture, and Corporate Services. So basically she runs the joint and I get to make speeches. It is, as I said, a pleasure to be here with you all today. Alexicon Energy, Alexicon Corporation, and Alexicon Group were formally constituted in 2019 with the consolidation of Whitby Hydro and Viridian Connections. Since that time, there have been 4 CEOs. I'm the 4th. Hopefully, I get to be the longest standing CEO. But I'm closing in on 1 year at the organization. September 20th next week will be 1 year. And I had hoped to be able to come before council earlier in my journey with Alexicon, but COVID being what it is, here we are almost a year later. But as I said, it is absolutely a pleasure to be here. The first slide that you see in front of you is the 2022, as at September, version of our executive leadership team. As the mayor introduced, my name is Indrani Bhutani D'Souza, and I'm president and CEO of Alexicon Energy. Stacia Boss is with me today, as mentioned. Moran McDonald is our vice president of distribution operations. Kevin Whitehead, vice president of asset management. Kristen Romano, vice president customer experience. Christine Chandler, general counsel, and Cynthia Chan, chief financial officer. It isn't by design that 7/8 of the executive team are women. We have 1 vacancy currently, and in fact are now recruiting for an additional executive. I have no preconceived notions on gender or outcome, but it is an interesting twist of fate that in an energy sector that is otherwise heavily male-dominated, to see a slate of individuals highly accomplished that not only has a gender bias currently that leans the other way and that has ethnic diversity is certainly an accomplishment and a compliment to the board members of Alexicon Corporation Group and Energy in putting their faith in a diverse group of individuals. As you can see in front of you, a snapshot of the city of Belleville. At Alexicon Energy, we say that we power life's most meaningful moments. We're the 4th largest municipally owned local distribution company in Ontario, and we empower customers, 18,000 customers, both business and residential, here in the city of Belleville. Amongst the other municipalities that own Alexicon Energy, aside from the city of Belleville, are the town of Ajax, the municipality of Clarington, the city of Pickering, and the town of Whitby. So in energy, it's often the case that leaders like myself make very bad jokes and very poor puns, and so I feel that it's important that I not break this streak. And so as you know, this has been a very stormy year in the energy sector in Ontario, pun intended, for our organization as well as for Ontarians in general. On the May long weekend, and so I'll cast backwards before I touch upon the slide in front of us. On the May long weekend, as you may be aware, and depending on where your travels took you on that May long weekend, derecho, which is a very linear and fast-moving storm, ripped through southern Ontario. From an Alexicon Energy standpoint, it was the worst storm that we have experienced since the organization was formed. It's called a level 3 storm, greater than 25,000 customers out for greater than 24 hours. With that outage, we had 80% of customers restored within the first 48 hours. It took us a remaining 6 days to get all customers back on. But the devastation of that storm was greater than the 2013 ice storm. Our restoration efforts far surpassed in terms of rapidity compared to that 2013 ice storm that hit our predecessor organizations. That being said, no sooner had we recovered from the devastation of the derecho, but on June 16th, as many of you will have experienced, on June 16th, we had a storm that ripped through the city of Belleville. We activated our power restoration team based on severe thunderstorm warnings, including the threat of a tornado hitting the region. The warning continued and persisted during regular business hours, which was fortuitous compared to the derecho because the derecho hit on the long weekend, and frankly, the first long weekend in a time of COVID when people could actually gather. The benefit that we experienced in the June 16th storm was that because it hit during normal business hours, we were able to immediately have all hands on deck and be on standby for possible storm restoration and related repairs. We notified customers via Twitter as well as through our website in order to have customers prepared for what might be a long 24 to 48 hours following. And so the storm was a severe thunderstorm with EFO tornado bursts throughout Belleville. I had the benefit of ongoing communication with Mr. Mayor as we tried quickly to get our teams in place in order to activate restoration activities and to bring customers back as safely and as quickly as possible. Hydro One lost 2 feeders during the storm, and those 2 feeders supply Alexicon's equipment. That being said, after Hydro One was able to restore power, in a number of instances, downed trees on our lines were the hindrance to further restoration efforts. That being said, in just over a day, we had everybody back up and running. During the storm, over 22,000 Alexicon customers in Belleville were interrupted. So that brings me to a discussion of storm reliability. Certainly what most people want to hear about is to not hear from the president and CEO of their energy company because it means that everything's okay. And I would like nothing further than to not have storms to talk about. And so it's frustrating when you hear people talk about, well, these are once in 100-year events. Well, given that a couple of them happened within 3 weeks of each other, I would argue that they're not once in 100-year events. And so we continue to prepare and learn from the events that transpire. What we did learn from the May derecho storm was that we were very prepared in terms of policies and processes and activation of control center in the event of a major emergency. What we also learned, though, was that in the event of a level 3 storm, which both of these were level 2 and level 3 and level 2 respectively, some of our processes have to change. Now, the benefit to having a storm 3 weeks after your first storm is that there are some immediate debrief and learnings that we were able to put in place in response to the Belleville storm. We continue to debrief on both of these storms, and our boards of directors are going to be receiving storm debriefs, as well as each of the municipalities is receiving a debrief as I'm delivering to you today. In terms of system reliability, when I reflect on Q1 2022 over Q2 2022, what we've found is that for SAIDI, and that's a totally utility technical term, so what it actually means is the average number of hours that a customer was interrupted in Q1, it was 1.15, and our total outage duration was 22,000 hours, and that's mainly attributable to a single big outage in Belleville, which you may recall was in early January of this year. And at that time, 2 different things happened at the same time. First, Hydro One had a station issue that tripped and interrupted our supply. And then at the same time, we had a faulty overhead conductor, so one of our overhead assets failed. And so that was at Harder Substation, and that caused the interruption. Now, interestingly, notwithstanding the June storm, the number of hours that customers were out was greater as a result of that Hydro One and therefore a Lexicon-related issue than the June 16th storm. We were able to respond more quickly in a weather event than when we're reliant on issues that are upstream, if you will, of us. For SAFE, which is the number of times that power is interrupted by to customers, we had station defects in 2021, in Q1 of 2022, as compared to Q2 of 2022, when we had a greater number of outages related to the storm. So all that to say that in terms of the average number of hours that customers were out in Q2 versus Q1, Q2 was improved because of that major event in January. The storm was less bad in terms of number of hours. In terms of the number of times that a customer was out, that was worse in Q2 because of the storm. So it's very interesting, the impact that a storm event, and despite the level of activity and restoration that we undertake, the impact that it can have on some key customer-related statistics. We continue to invest as an organization in our assets and in our operations teams, and that's true throughout our service area that stretches, as you know, from Gravenhurst all the way over to Belleville. And so for assets that are here in the city of Belleville, we've done a Jones substation feeder upgrade. It was a full rebuild because of a pole fire. We've done switch replacement due to our aging equipment. And we are doing asset renewals, so pole replacements throughout the city. And so that makes those wires hang beautifully, and hopefully they don't come down as a result of another windstorm. Though we do have lots of poles now, so if anybody needs a pole, let me know. We've continued to communicate with customers. I apologize for the font size on this one, but if you are an Alexicon Energy customer, hopefully you will have received this issue of the Illuminator, which is our customer communication document. We issued a special edition of the Communicator newsletter that has a few tips, frankly, on how to respond to storms and what to do when a storm hits. What we found as a result of both storms was that customers don't appreciate, or perhaps can't appreciate, and it needs to be communicated, that there's only so much that we can do at any given time, and that sometimes when you see a tree down, especially if it's on your property, that has to be cleared first, and that's a homeowner issue, before we're able to come and touch the equipment. And so while storms are unfortunate, I think it's created a significant opportunity for us to communicate to residents and to constituents throughout the communities that we serve, and frankly, for them to want to listen because it's now more relevant. Obviously, we can communicate this from time to time, but it only resonates and takes hold with individuals if you've had a personal experience. What I'd also like to add is that as a result of the storms, many of our directors were highly communicative and amazing partners to us, and the same is true of our municipal partners during these storm events. We've kept the lines of communication open, active on Twitter and our website, as well as direct emails from me. And I do appreciate that while this is the first time that I actually get to see you live and in person, I've felt the partnership throughout the communities that we serve. So thank you. One of the other elements that we are in partnership with our municipalities on is corporate social responsibility and corporate giving. The 2022 budget for corporate giving for Belleville is just over $37,000. We are almost fully spent on that $37,000. And as you can see in front of you, there's a varied list of recipients, as well as some accolades or words of gratitude that individuals and entities that have received funding from Alexicon Energy and the City of Belleville have expressed. What I would like to say is that I'm so pleased to be a partner in the corporate giving program with the City of Belleville, and more importantly, for those that follow me, I'm an active advocate for equity, diversity, and inclusion, which has been a very hard place to be, as I said at the start of my comments, given the nature of the sector that I've been working in for almost 25 years. There's not a lot of people that look like me. Or are my vintage, certainly not many years ago. Now my vintage seems to have leveled up with others. But what I will say is that what you see on this list of recipients is such a diversity of range of recipients, and so it's very heartwarming when you're putting together corporate giving programs to see the kind of reach and impact that we can have in partnership with one another, and that serves the constituents and the customers of Alexicon Energy and constituents of Belleville. I did start my comments indicating about our consolidation in 2019, and Alexicon Energy, we believe, has continued to deliver exceptional shareholder value over these first 3 years. Cumulative dividends have reached $33.4 million, as well as $11 million in a promissory note of interest distributed to shareholders. Our assets have grown by almost 25%. And over this 3-year period, largely due to an increase in our capital investments to maintain and expand our distribution system. Now, I'll pause there for a minute on expanding our distribution system, because I will say that hopefully this just continues to be a sign of things to come. As you know, we are faced with the electrification of everything, it feels like. I don't think that anyone, I'm not sure my executive team peers would have ever thought that it was cool to be an executive in the electricity sector. It's pretty cool to be an executive in the electricity sector now, because electrification is going to, again, pardon the pun, power our lives. And so there will be a lot of activity in the future. We have to continue to expand our distribution system and to enhance it to continue to provide safe and reliable electricity to all. And finally, shareholder equity has increased by almost 5% over these first few years of Alexicon Energy. Like any good corporate entity, especially an entity of our size, like I said, 4th largest municipally owned in Ontario, we take the strategic outlook of our organization very seriously. And so what you see before you, we call it our strategic house. Energy executives are not marketers, so I apologize that we just call it the strategic house, because it looks like, you guessed it, what? A house, yes. So our strategic house has 4 key pillars: customer centricity, operational excellence, economic development, and strategic investment. And so in the early years of Alexicon Energy, the strategic plan was conceived. It was conceived in 2020, and we started making investments related to it in 2021. Now, that has been with its own set of challenges in trying to execute on a strategic plan during a time of COVID. That being said, we have made great strides already, and year 1 was absolutely a build phase, as you see on the slide. Year 2, which is this year, 2022, was supposed to be build and stabilize. I think that build will continue through this year and seep into year 3, which will likely be more of a build and stabilize year, with year 4 then taking on the growth potential year 4 and year 5. And so there are a number of different investments that we continue to make in the organization, ensuring financial stability, innovation, grid reliability, and most importantly, safety. All of that is underpinned by a drive towards a one Alexicon culture. Obviously, when you're comprised of predecessor organizations, it's difficult, if not impossible, to have people avoid saying, well, I'm from the former Viridian, I'm from the former Whitby. Well, we've actually had a significant amount of turnover in the organization because of retirements, which were anticipated, and then because of the great resignation as a result of COVID. And so we have over 40% of employees that don't come from one of the predecessor entities, myself included. And so driving towards one Alexicon is pivotal, because, as has been said previously, culture will eat strategy for breakfast. And so we are keenly focused on our one Alexicon. Hopefully what you experienced here in Belleville, and certainly Mr. Mayor had indicated to me that the response to the Belleville storm with crews from other areas of parts of our service area was tremendous, and that's the drive that we're hoping for. A move to one Alexicon, no matter where in our geography or service area you normally service. And with that, I'm happy to take questions.
Great, well, thank you very much. And certainly in June, with both storms, in May and June, I talked about the amazing response from our employees, the employees that work for Alexicon, both in Belleville and outside. In May, we were relatively untouched by that storm, and we were able to share our people, and they traveled to different parts of Ontario to help with some serious aftermath. And then in June, unfortunately, we got to had the favor returned to us when those crews from those areas came and helped us here. And it was incredible. Really want to say thank you for that. It was very, very good. And it was really pleasing to me when I attended the appreciation barbecue in July, I believe it was, in Ajax at the Alexicon headquarters, to hear from people that were from other parts of the system who talked about how well Jeff O'Neill and his team had everything ready to go. And when they got here, they were deployed quickly, effectively, and it went really, really well. And that, of course, makes us really happy. We're very proud of our local crew here for a lexicon, and we're lucky to have them. Yeah, and I guess the last thing I would just say is, I have the privilege of serving not just on the Lexicon Corporation Board, but also as chair of the Audit, Finance, and Risk Management Committee. And the financial performance of this organization is very, very good. And, since the beginning, we really do have a huge debt of gratitude to the Council of Ross McDougall that created first Viridian, which has now led into a Lexicon. That legacy of stable funding has been terrific. I know Director Hines likes the fact that what she is told we will get, we receive. It helps her with her job in terms of budgeting. And so we look forward to a very, very bright future. Thank you very much for coming today and for the visit. And earlier this afternoon, we took a tour of the brand new Lexicon Energy building and garage that is on Coleman Street, right by the transit terminal. And that is moving along really nicely, and it's good to see. With that, I'll open it up for questions from the floor. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Worship. Just one great presentation, mind you. Thank you very much. And you emphasize the inclusion and equity for everybody, and that's wonderful. One question, you talked about interruption by Hydro One. How much are we dependent on Hydro One for any or no interruptions? Is it a small percentage, or how does Hydro One come into this scene?
They have thank you for the question, through you, Your Worship. They have the higher voltage feed, and so that feeds into our substations. So if there's a loss of supply at Hydro One, that will impact our feeders for sure. That's simply the nature of, I shouldn't say simply, but it is the nature of the distribution system and how transmission versus distribution is set up. That being said, we are working collaboratively with Hydro One throughout our service territory, because this happens elsewhere as well, on a couple of things. One, to get better notification if they have an issue at a upstream from us, so that if they're doing maintenance or have something that's offline at any given time, that we have the heads up, so that in advance of a storm event, we would know whether there's something else going on that we need to be aware of. And then working collaboratively when the events happen, in terms of ongoing and intense communication in terms of timing for when restoration will happen. Because certainly it was less impactful here in Belleville in the storm event. It took far longer, as you saw in January with the Hydro One related event. And certainly we worked, there was heavy collaboration with Hydro One throughout the derecho storm. But some of that is difficult to deal with. They need time to get their supply back on, which then takes us time to bring our customers back on. So it does have a ripple effect. But part of it is ongoing collaboration that I think is taking hold greater now than ever before.
Great. Anyone else? Any questions or comments? Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. First of all, thanks for the presentation. Just a couple of notes. You made reference to 18,000 members here in Belleville that you have.
18,000 customers, yeah.
Yes, and you said that you give back to the corporate spending is 37,000. I still think there's a few bucks left in the kitty, but I just wanted to thank you that for the support with the Diwali Festival. The city had its first last October. It was very successful. And
I did note that that was part of the list. So
yeah, it's coming up.
I was pleased to see it.
And it's coming up in about 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And
Third week of
I know you're
October.
involved with the Festival Lights, and thanks for speaking to equity, diversity, inclusion. I'm the chair of the city's committee, and we've worked hard. The committee has over the last several years, and we're starting to see that work pay off by being a more inclusive city and everybody being respected. So thanks for acknowledging that tonight.
Thank you so much.
Great. Anyone else? Well, Indrani, thank you very much for coming today. It's been It's been a pleasure. I know you talked about the fact that we've had 4 CEOs since the merger with Whitby Hydro, and it's a little bit.
Well, I should clarify, it was a bit of a cute comment,
Exactly,
right?
yes.
But-
We had an acting CEO at the very beginning before we engaged Leslie Gallinger, who started a lot of the strategic planning process and took us through the beginning of COVID. In her words, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity came up with provincial electricity regulator and distribution company, so she took with it, and it gave us the opportunity to hire you after having another interim CEO. So we've been very fortunate with the talent that we've had, and it's been really good to work with you as both a member of the board, but also as the mayor of the city of Belleville. The Hydro One substation that mostly feeds the city of Belleville on Center Street, Hydro One is doubling the capacity of that facility. So, Councillor Thompson's comment regarding the security of our supply, we know that we are a growing city, and our electricity needs are also growing, and there is investment being made in the Belleville market to ensure that we keep up with it. While you're on the Alexicon energy side, Alexicon Group is hard at work in terms of innovative ways to electrify, and we're looking forward to working with them in the future for ways to get more electrified products into our market. So thank you very much for coming today. Thanks for spending the day here in Belleville, and look forward to being able to officially open the new facility with a grand opening sometime in the fall, early winter.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So colleagues, I have the resolution is that the deputation by Adrani Butni de Souza, President and CEO of Alexicon Energy, providing an update on Alexicon Energy status and activities be received. Moved by Councillor Feeney, seconded by Councillor McCaw. All in favor? It's carried. And so now we'll move, and I'll invite Jennifer Bishop of the Highland Shores Children's Aid Society, who will make a deputation to Council. Good afternoon, Ms. Bishop. Welcome to our meeting.
Hi, good afternoon, Your Worship and fellow council members. I'm Jennifer Bishop. I'm a network development worker with Highland Shores Children's Aid, and I'm joined by my colleague Joshua Reeves, who is a university social work student that is with me today. So I just want to thank you for allowing us to come again to speak about this important issue and come to ask you to listen to this today. So every October, Children's Aid Societies across the province raise awareness about the important role that individuals and communities play in supporting vulnerable children, youth, and their families. On Dress Purple Day, CASs collaborate with community partners to speak up for every child and youth's right to safety and well-being in all spaces, and to celebrate the community that cares for kids. As you can see, only 20% of the referrals that are related to extreme abuse that most people associate with child welfare. The other 80% of cases that and families that we become involved with are typically where they're having struggles to meet the child's needs, whether those are physical safety needs or emotional needs. And some of the difficulties that families face include mental health concerns, addictions, social isolation, and extreme poverty and financial stress. So what we know about child protection is that nearly 50% of all substantiated allegations involve exposure to intimate partner violence. In 21% of substantiated investigations, neglect was identified as the overriding concern, while physical abuse was the primary form of maltreatment in 19% of families that we work with. In 97% of all of our investigations, we are able to work with children and families while children remain in the home, meaning that only 3% of children that we come in contact with have to be removed from their home for safety reasons. Our top referrals to our agency are law enforcement, parents or custodial parents, school or educational personnel, and medical and mental health professionals in the community. So Children's Aid Societies investigate referrals from professionals and members of the public when they have concerns about a child's treatment. The concerns include physical, sexual, and emotional abuse, and or that a child or youth is being neglected. CAS has often worked with children and youth where neglect is the key factor. Their families may struggle with chronic challenges such as mental health issues, addictions, domestic violence, or extreme financial stress. We've had to take a look at how the impact and what the impact has been of with COVID on our families and our working with families in the community. And we have found that people's mental health was precarious. We saw more substance abuse and anxiety in children and youth. Housing is also an issue with the cost and increased costs of housing and with the amount of rental units that are available for families. We are there's continued calls from schools, the concerns that they haven't seen children in a long time and they worry about attendance issues. There's an increase in domestic violence, parental mental health concerns, and custody access issues. Community partners are faced with challenges with recruitment to provide critical supports to children and youth and families. An example of that is respite services for families in the community as well. There's also, we had noticed that internet connectivity with high-speed internet is something that is troublesome for at least some of our northern clients and some of our clients too, with the cost of that and being able to afford to pay for that, and then hence be able to work and attend some of the things that they may need to attend virtually. We have had to really be creative with interventions with our families. We've used a lot of our internal programs a little bit more, like our parent enrichment program. We have tried to make attempts to build family support systems through our network development program. We have used our in-house tutoring program more often, and it's available to all children that we work with. We've had to have some creative use of funding and stretching monies to partnerships by cost sharing and prioritizing things like educational assessments and things like that. We've had to link some of the people that are calling in to community agencies as opposed to opening files with Highland Shores. We are continuing to spend more time with families to help us better understand the needs and the overall picture of what they're experiencing. Doing some work virtually allowed for some of our processes to move more quickly, like some things like mediation and things like that. There's been more training opportunities, less time spent in court. Meetings could happen more quickly, and we've been in more regular contact with some of our co-workers through this, so those are some of the things that we've noticed. You can see by the chart that still Belleville is the area that we receive the most calls for, and it is our biggest city that we oversee as well. So, and this breaks down the other regions so Quinte West, that area is the second most calls, and Center Hastings and Northumberland after that. So what you can do is you can call Highland Shores if you have any concerns that a child or youth may be in need of protection or assistance. Reach out to neighbors and friends, check in, offer support, those types of things. And know that your call to us can help a child and family and provide them with the support that they may need at the time. So this year we are asking you to think about why you wear purple. Make a video, tell everybody why you wear purple, post it on your social media, and let the community know that you are there to support children, youth, and families. And we're encouraging you to use the hashtag #IWearPurpleBecause with your social media accounts. Is there any I know this year we're asking again to declare October as Dress Purple Month, and to allow us to hang the purple ribbons on the lampposts again, with our commitment to ensure that we take them down at the end of the month.
Great, well, thank you very much for coming today. And, you know, we've always, you know, I think Belleville City Council will be unanimous on the fact that we really have a duty to all the children of our community, including those that are in aid. And I was so pleased to be at the Children Foundation event last week. I'll speak about it under announcements, but to see those children who are in care. I'm sorry, thank you. I was just saying earlier that one of the, I think, responsibilities that we're unanimous on around this table is we understand that we all have a duty to all the children in our community, and those also include those that are in care. And I was so pleased, I think it was last week or the week before, that I was at the Children's AIDS Foundation Reach for Success evening,
Yes.
where we were celebrating the educational achievements of children who are in care and who have, are going to university and received awards and scholarships and have high academic standings. And it was such an impressive evening and so nice to be part of. And so thank you for all the work that you and all the people that are involved in your organization do for the young people in our community. And we all recognize that we have a duty to help protect them moving forward. Colleagues, Councillor Alsop, do you have any comments or questions?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and through you, I just wanted to say thank you so much for all the work that you do in securing the welfare of children in our area. I noticed during your presentation that you said that 97% of cases, the children don't have to be removed from the home. I was wondering that when we look at 20% of the cases were for sexual abuse or physical abuse, and then about another 18 or 19% was serious neglect. In those instances, how do you work with the parents and work with the people in the home to ensure the welfare of the children? What sort of tools are you able to use? And then the second part of the question was, when you showed the slide about the breakdown throughout the area in terms of the percentage of calls driving from each municipality, Belleville seemed to be considerably higher, even though we are a larger municipality. When we start adding up, say, Port Hope and Quinte West together, we end up with a similar population size, but certainly we're still disproportionately generating the most calls. So do you have a sense of what factors might be contributing to that, and what we might be able to do as a city to bring those numbers down? Thank you.
Well, the first thing for working and to ensure that families and children can remain in their home, we're accessing different supports and community services to be able to provide support to the families. One of our big things for this campaign is that we need the community to be able to do this together. So it's that we're really reaching out to other community services to be able to help families. One of the things that I also mentioned was the network development program, and that's the program that I'm currently working in, and that is really getting people that are familiar with the family, like either family or friends, to come and to be able to help support, especially when it comes to things like different stresses or not being able to access different things, whether it's transportation in to be able to make medical appointments or whatever those things are, just to lessen the stress on families, so that we can focus on the education and things like that to be able to help support them. For your second part of the question, I do not know what contributes to one community or adding up the stats. I just know that the breakdown of them. I would suggest, our ED or our ED's office would be able to provide that information, or I can try to find that out and get back to you on it, if that would help. Sure, thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thanks for the presentation. You mentioned about community and network and development in your comments today. I'm a big believer in working with school boards. And I want to know what the buy-in is from Algonquin Lakeshore Catholic School Board, Hastings Prince Edward Public School Board. We've got Albert College here. Kids spend a lot of time, and I think we're all passionate about this. And we saw the stats tonight. Kids spend all their time now, at least 30, 40 hours in a school. If the school's in and their classmates are wearing purple and their educators and everybody inside the building, it might make that conversation for someone to open up with a colleague at school or possibly a teacher. So I'd like to know what the buy-in is from the local school boards on this.
I know that the Ontario Association for Children's Aid Societies puts out a lot of presentations and different resources for school boards to be able to access, and in the classrooms to access, to have these conversations with kids. I know that I don't know specifics about each of the school boards and how they do that, and how much they buy into it. I do know that it's been really successful with the school boards. I see a lot of kids that wear purple, that type of thing, but we wouldn't have access to know how many are actually using any of the tools that are supplied. We provide them with the resources to be able to.
Great, thank you. Anyone else for questions or comments?
Would it be okay if I step forward and
Absolutely.
pass out some pins?
Yes,
for-
please, yeah. Be wonderful. And while you're handing out those pins, I will ask my colleagues for the resolution, which is that the deputation by Jennifer Bishop, Highland Shores Children's Aid, regarding October as Dress Purple Month in support of vulnerable children, youth, and families be received. Moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Alsop. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you very much. Wonderful, thank you. All right, Jennifer, thank you again for
Thank you so
appearing
much.
before us. And good luck with everything you do. It's such an important
Thank you.
item for our community. All right, I'm now going to ask Brad McNevin to come forward. Brad is is it still the general manager, the title that we have at Quinte Conservation for the person in charge of that great organization? But nevertheless, Brad McNevin from Quinte Conservation will make a deputation to council. Welcome, good afternoon.
Thank you, Your Worship, and City of Belleville councillors and staff for allowing me to address council. It's nice to be here. Nice to be here in person. I'm going to put a little plug in. We're celebrating our 75th year in operation this coming year, and we're celebrating it on October 1st at our Vanderwater Conservation Area, where we're doing an artisan market, and we have a show by the Tweed Theatre Group. We have an Indigenous storytelling show, or Indigenous storytelling around a campfire, and we'll have some silent auction items and a history walk through Vanderwater in the fall at night, which is not normally the case because we normally ask people to leave before dark. So it'll be a great event, and you can buy tickets and find out more about it on our website. That's not what I'm here to talk about, but I wanted to put that plug in just as a opportunity. I am here to talk about the programs and service inventory and some of the requirements that we have to put into effect some provincially mandated agreements with all of our municipal partners. So the province of Ontario made some changes to the Conservation Authorities Act over the last couple years, and we're sort of in that implementation stage at this point, and specifically around the programs and service inventory, we have to do some work to get the agreements in place. I threw this slide in just as a precursor because there was also some governance changes. It shouldn't impact the city of Belleville, but it will impact some of our municipalities, and it's around our board of directors. There is now a clause in the act that says 70% of each of our municipalities must be represented on our board of directors by members of council. City of Belleville has 3 members on our board, and that should not change, and it's all based on population. So if you're over 50,000, you get 3 members on the Conservation Authorities board. It's very similar across it's the same across the province. If you're in between that 10,000 and 50,000 number, you get 2 board members. If you're under 10,000, you get 1 board member. So we do have some municipalities that have citizen appointees on our boards, and unfortunately that has been taken out unless that particular municipality wants to ask for an exemption from that. The other pieces in there is that the chairs and vice chairs can only serve for a 2-year term, 2 consecutive years in a row. Because of the amalgamation of Quinte Conservation, we've always rotated our chairs and vice chairs in a 2-year cycle through the Moira region, Napanee region, and Prince Edward region. So that particular item's not really going to change for us. And then the other piece was the minister can also appoint an agricultural rep onto our board. Our neighbors to the west, Lower Trent, has a agricultural rep appointed to their board. Quinte has not had one appointed to our board as of yet. The other piece is about the website, just about keeping our website up to date with all of our finances and agendas and meeting minutes and things like that are on there, and we do that anyways. And then the minister's power. So under the minister's power section, the minister can direct conservation authorities to issue a permit under Section 28 for development approvals by using the MZO, which is the ministerial zoning order, and they can require ecological compensation if that's deemed important. And then the minister may also issue their own Section 28 permit for development with or without input from conservation authorities. So the objective for me today is to get Council's approval in principle for the scope of our Category 2 and 3 programs and services to be delivered by our organization moving into 2024. 2024 is going to come up a few times in my presentation because that's the date that we have to have all of these things, clauses in place. And then to receive direction to work with the administrative staff on getting these provincially mandated agreements in place so that we can have a smooth transition. City of Belleville is, I'll say, lucky. They only have one conservation authority that they're dealing with. Some of my municipal partners have 2, 3, 4. One has 5. One of our municipalities have, I think, well, no, the most is 4. So 4 different conservation authorities. We are trying to make this entire thing seamless. So working with our neighbor conservation authorities to make sure that everybody's on the same page and going about these agreements in a similar format. However, they are going to be a little bit different. The Conservation Authorities Act, so it does have a purpose identified in the Act, and that's really to provide for the organization and delivery of programs and services that further the conservation, restoration, development, and management of natural resources and watersheds of Ontario. So that's our purpose. It's identified in the Act, and Quinte Conservation, we follow that purpose. What we do fits within all of those sort of categories that are outlined. Under Section 21 of the Conservation Authority, it identifies our scope, which gives us the powers under the Act, and there are things like to research, study, and investigate the watershed, to plant and produce trees on Crown lands or private lands with the consent of landowners, to collaborate with other levels of government and organizations. I handed out earlier our strategic plan around the table, and you'll see in there, if you get an opportunity to flip through it, the collaboration and partnerships is a really big focus of our strategic plan moving into over the next 10 years, just to foster that, because we realize that we can get more things done if we all have everybody on board and all the right stakeholders at the table to implement changes. We're also given the power to temporarily or permanently alter the course of rivers and streams, where the control of flow of surface water to prevent flooding or pollution. So that Section 21 really outlines all of our powers. So getting into the important pieces about the presentation, and that's the programs and services. So under Section 21, it's been identified that we are to have 3 categories of programs and services. Under Category 1 are those programs and services that are mandatory. So that's Section 21.2. Mandatory programs mean that we don't, as a conservation authority, you don't have an option. You have to do certain things. Flood forecasting, natural hazard studies, dam operations, some water quality monitoring, conservation authority lands. We have a lot of lands that we have to look after, or we have to provide services for. So that captures Category 1 services. The pieces that the agreements fall under, they're the Category 2 and 3 programs. So Category 2 is municipal programs and services that a CA provides on behalf of a municipality, and that has to be now to be done under a memorandum of understanding or other such agreement. And or a couple examples of what those Category 2 programs would be. We provide risk management official services for the city of Belleville as part of the Source Water Protection Act. So there are things that fall under an Category 2. Other things would be if we do plan review for natural heritage, stormwater review, hydro-G review. Again, they are things we do on behalf of a municipality because they ask us for our expertise, because we have those sort of natural heritage and stormwater and hydro-G services within our operation. And then the Category 3 services are advisable programs and services that a conservation authority determines are important to provide. All of this would be done through consultation with our board of directors, but things like stewardship and education and some watershed monitoring are the important pieces for the Category 3 advisable services. We know that when we go out into schools and deal with the public and talk to the public about the importance of the environment, we know people develop a stronger connection to it. So we as an organization believe that stewardship and education is extremely important, because if we start with the youth, then they grow up appreciating things. So what are we required to do? So over the next course of, I'll say maybe within the next year, we have to have a memorandum of understandings for all of our Category 2 municipal programs and services. So we have to have those agreements in place, signed. For us, it's 18 different municipalities that I have to get those agreements with. And then similarly with the Category 3 programs and services, we have to secure those cost apportionment agreements for the services that fall under the Category 3. In regards to the timeline, I'm doing these outreach sessions with councils. We're moving into December when, we're in an election year, obviously, and we're moving into that December before new councils get formed. And then I obviously have council members on my board, so they would come on January, February, and then I have literally a few months before we start looking at the 2024 budget. So I have to have all of these agreements in place, hopefully by June of next year, and so that they can be implemented for that drop date of 2024. So how do the different programs relate to our budget? Category 1, again, they're mandatory, so we have to do them. So we get some funding from the province. Primarily our partners, our municipal partners, fund our operations. So the costs are allocated to municipalities on the municipal levy, and for us it's through the modified current value assessment or the benefit-based apportionment method. But Quinte Conservation has used the CVA method, and we don't foresee that changing. And then the Category 2 and 3 programs, they're similar in terms of our budget. We charge fees, we get grants, we have special levies allocated to that particular municipality. For instance, Belleville has a special levy for dam operations for some of the ice control structures. That would be a Category 2 program that we're going to have to hash out an agreement for. And then the Category 3 are only those participating municipalities. So those municipalities that want to be part of any particular program, then we apportion we have a cost apportionment agreement to deliver that program. In February 2021, I delivered to you our programs and service inventory, and it was based on our 2022 approved budget. And it basically, I have an example of it, just the one page coming up, but it basically broke down all of our Category 1, 2, and 3 programs and showed where those, where the funding for each of those programs came from. Our budget is primarily made up, 37% is for watershed management, 34% is flood and erosion control, 20% corporate service, and 9% conservation services, which is stuff we do on lands and stewardship and education. That's just the example of the page that I sent. On there, it has all of the breakdown of what category, each of the items with a brief description, and then where we get the funding. So for instance, if we look at environmental planning and regulations, 64% of the budget comes from the municipal levy. We raise about 30% in self-generated funds, and then the province gives us 6%. Through QC's cost allocation, so City of Belleville is at the top of this because of the, well, they provide 38.8% of our budget, so they are our single biggest municipality, and some people have brought attention to the variance from 2021 to 2022, so I do highlight that. It is a significant variance, but that is because in 2022, that was the first year we implemented our 10-year capital asset management plan for our water control infrastructure. So all of our dams, we have 39 across the watershed that we put in a 10-year plan, asset management plan to repair and make sure that those structures are kept in good standard. We have two roles. Under category 1, we have a commenting and an approval role under planning application. So our commenting role for planning applications is strictly around natural hazards. So under section 3.1 of the provincial policy statement, natural hazards would be things like karst topography, floodplains, wetlands, those types of things. Under category 2, we have planning applications that we provide comment on under sort of natural heritage, hydrogeology, and stormwater management. So we're a commenting agency only. We peer review that for on behalf of our municipal partners and provide comment. We also have an approval process under category 1, and that's through section 28 of the Conservation Authorities Act. So that's specific around development, interference with wetlands, and alterations to shoreline and water courses. And that's where we're getting into issuing permits at the building stage. And then we also have the Source Water Protection Program, where we have an approval through Part 4 of the Clean Water Act. Category 3, so again, it's stewardship services, things like non-passive activities at conservation areas, education, so whether we do school programs, some of them are protecting biodiversity, exploring habitats, wetland wonders, and soil and erosion workshops. We have the H.R. Frank Center, which I don't know very many students that don't get an opportunity to go to that facility and get their hands in the mud, play with a bug, or look at a live tree and enjoy that facility. But we also do some community programs and events like forest therapy, Wildwood, Stream of Dreams, Yellowfish Road. We do interpretive hikes and watershed workshops. They fall all under that category 3. And the McLeod Dam Hydro Facility is in there, as well as our Depot Lakes Campground. They're kind of like category 3s, but they don't really cost the municipalities any money because they pay for themselves. So we have a hydro facility. We get paid by a lexicon. They buy our hydro. That hydro pays for the operation of the plant. So it's kind of a break-even situation where municipalities aren't impacted. So my next steps are just, we're in the confirmation stage of the category 2 and 3 programs and services to be supported through MOU and memorandum of understanding and cost apportionment agreements. And then looking to have council endorse that the municipal staff work with our staff to draft and update agreements as needed to meet regulatory requirements. I do have a suggested motion on here, particularly around all conservation authorities have been provided guidance that we have to submit 6 progress reports to the province to make sure that that we're all working towards these goals. So the 6 progress reports have to be done every 3 months. Something like this would go a long way in showing them that I'm getting out there talking to each of our 18 municipalities, and we're working towards implementing these changes to the Act. And I think that was it, and I have some opportunity to answer some questions if there is any.
Great. Well, thank you very, very much, Mr. McNevin. So just to review for everyone, particularly those watching on television, We have three, or we watching the video of today's meeting, we have three of our councillors who serve on the Quinte Conservation Board, Councillor Chris Millette, Councillor Sean Kelly, and Councillor Paul Carr, if I'm correct in my recollection. And we have had I would describe it as an excellent working relationship, and I really appreciate the support of Quinte Conservation working with the City of Belleville, particularly with a couple of really important development proposals that you've provided, you've done some research and you've helped to support them, and certainly the 110-acre development in the industrial park is one, but also the whole Black Bear Ridge Village concept plan that you took a look at and provided your feedback and comments, as well as the purchase of the Bakelite property for a full preservation area that we can keep that for recreational use. So I just want to say thank you very, very much for that. I don't see any issue with the resolution. Typically, what department would you recommend that we ask to work with this? I know I asked CEO Bove and it'll go to him, but typically you're working with our planning and our engineering and development department, or would it be a different one?
No, primarily, I think the big pieces for the program to service inventory are going to be the planning agreements specifying out the services that we can provide under those agreements.
Okay, that's great. And then my only other question is, there are a number of Category 3 programs that have benefited Belleville significantly, and I think about tree planting and the fact that we plant literally thousands of trees every year throughout the city. In a situation in which you have specific cost sharing or cost agreements with municipalities, how would that work? Would it be a situation in which, again, you're able to leverage the municipal contribution for other sources of funding to be able to provide something like trees in the same way you've done now? Or would it be something that the municipality would be paying fully for moving forward?
Right now, we have been lucky that we've received lots of grants and matching dollars for those types of programs. In the future, I don't know what that looks like, but if we continue down the same path, we've been lucky. We have a couple staff that work primarily on the stewardship side of things, where they're working with landowners to plant trees around watercourses and wetlands and parks. And moving forward, we're hoping that continues, but but as a contribution from municipalities, it's important that we have that sort of relationship and that it defined in an agreement that will work towards that, because if there is cost and we can get all 18 of our municipalities on board, then the cost gets shared between everybody.
Absolutely. Okay, so we'll deal with this suggested resolution shortly, but I'm going to open it up to my colleagues to see if they have any questions or comments for Mr. McNevin. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. First of all, CEO, thank you for coming today for the presentation, and I don't think I speak for Councillor Carr or Councillor Millette. I can only speak for myself, but I think they'll agree. It's been an interesting 4 years being on the committee and working with the other 17 municipalities. We've learned a lot. I do recall early in our term as board members or committee members that in the late 90s, there was a certain premier that they cut conservation budget by $50 million. The current budget right now for the 36 conservation authorities is $5 million, and you receive $166,000 from the Ontario government. And you talk about the programs you do. You talk about education, environment, stewardship. I know it's like part of like the flood forecasting, control planning. That seems like a Mickey Mouse budget to try to roll this out. And with the staff and the work you do, we saw it firsthand. I think it was 8 weeks ago you were involved in B-Day. There were 2 staff members here in downtown Belleville at Marketplace, entrenched in your community, and you have to do that with 18 municipalities. That's not cheap, and the cost of fuel and the whole bit. I guess the question is, what's the government of the day? How supportive are they? They're working closely with conservation. We know the value. That's my first question, and I'll let you answer that, and I'll have the second one after that.
I guess we continue to try to foster our relationship with the province. It has been a challenge that when they cut us in 2018, by another 50%. It hurt us again, but I go back to our saying our municipalities are our primary partner. We don't go to, we deliver Section 39 funding that we get from the province, but it doesn't go a long way. It's specific to the natural hazard program, so flood forecasting and warning, and some planning and some administration, so it doesn't go a long way.
Final question. I know at Vanderwater, the new parking meters, if you will, are going up, or I think they're already in. There's a real benefit to people that love to visit the park, to buy the permit or the yearly pass. Maybe you want to get that out tonight. It's a good opportunity for you.
Yeah, it
Thank
is. We have gates now at Vanderwater and at Little Bluff in Prince Edward County with a plan to roll that out further, but you essentially, you buy an annual pass and you're going to get an actual access card that you can use at all of our properties. And then, or you can go, if you're just an occasional user, you can go and pay $5 to go into the park. And all that money raised goes specifically back into our conservation areas. So it goes to keeping the trails at a good standard, providing picnic shelters, providing access, so it goes right back into the properties.
Thank you, and good luck on the first. I know the Conservation Authority team has put a lot of work into that, and it should be a fun night. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Brad, for coming. First of all, I want to thank the Quinte Conservation. I sit on the committee for the source water protection, and I want to thank you from them for the work that you do with the source water protection and the cooperation between them and Quinte Conservation and the source water protection. My question is, on the trails that you maintain, are they maintained by staff or are they maintained by volunteers?
We have primarily by our staff. We have a field crew that goes out and does inspections and trims branches and things like that. We do have some trail stewards that we call them trail stewards that are out, and they'll give us a call if there is a hazardous tree. They'll do some minor pruning if they see some brush hanging over, but primarily it's done by our staff with some assistance from some trail stewards. And the trail stewards typically get a membership for free when they do that for us.
So does the general public, is there an opportunity for the general public to find out that they can be volunteers to maintain these trails and some of the facilities that you have?
Yeah, we obviously can't have everybody as a volunteer, but we do have on our website a volunteer application form where people can go and get more information about how they can volunteer. And we take volunteers for other things, like whether it's other stewardship type activities where we're tree planting or doing pollinator gardens. So we'll take volunteers to do that type of work too.
Okay, thank you, Brett.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, Mr. McNevin, thank you very much. The resolution is going to refer this to new business. I don't see any issues with us approving the resolution later on, so you're welcome to stay until that, or you can leave. But just on behalf of all of us, I want to thank you and all your staff. We have come to realize how important not just the environment is in the big sense of the word, and somewhere we live, but also shoreline erosion and storms and severe weather impacts, and how important it is for us to have proper planning. And we're grateful for the role that you play. So thank you very much, and appreciate you coming out today.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, so the resolution is that the deputation by Brad McNevin, Quinte Conservation, regarding its relationship with municipal partners and changes to the Conservation Authorities Act be received and referred to new business. Moved by Councillor Feeney and Councillor Alsop. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Okay, we have a couple items of correspondence. The first one is a September 6, 2022 letter from the Belleville Chamber of Commerce, and it refers to this fall 2022 city events. It's a report, so the resolution I'm looking for is that the September 6, 2022 letter from the Belleville Chamber of Commerce regarding the Fall Fun Fest on September 17th be received and referred to consent item 8B7. Moved by Councillor Alsop, seconded by Councillor Kelly. All in favor? It's carried. Second item is a letter from the Downtown District Business Improvement Association regarding a letter of non-objection for a food truck waiver. And the resolution is that the August 29, 2022 letter from the Downtown District BIA, confirming the board's support for waiving the provision contained in Schedule I of bylaw number 2006-140, a bylaw to license, regulate, and govern certain businesses that prohibits refreshment vehicles from operating within the downtown business improvement area be approved, and the provision contained in bylaw number 2006-140 be waived for the Porch Fest after party, the September 24th, which is on September 24th, 2022, and the Enchanted Holiday Market on November 17th, 2022. Moved by Councillor Alsop, second by Councillor Feeney. Any questions? All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Looking for a resolution that Council rise and go into Committee of the Whole to hear and consider reports, passing of recommendations, and resolutions with myself in the chair. Moved by Councillor McCaw, seconded by Councillor Alsop. All in favor? It's carried. So let's move into reports, shall we? 8A, the agenda shall include under reports items that warrant individual attention from Council. Starting with 8A1, regulating the acquisition and disposition of real property. Bylaw DCS 2022-30, and the resolution is that pursuant to the Director of Corporate Services Clerk's Report Number DCS 2022-30, a bylaw to regulate the acquisition and disposition of real property and the associated form, and a bylaw to amend the consolidated fees and charges bylaw 2021-195 be prepared for Council's consideration. Can I get this on the floor, please? Moved by Councillor Alsop, seconded by Councillor McCaw. Any questions or discussion on this item? Councillor Carr.
Yes, thank you. And it's great to see this policy come into place. I often thought that sometimes when we were particularly disposing of property, it was a little less, or a little haphazard, if you will, and this provides a more robust program. The question I have is with respect to public notice, and I see, so that would be in the definitions under E. I don't see anything where we would provide signage on the actual property. So I'm looking for, if we're disposing of a piece of property, similar to what we expect for planning applications, and I know our signage for planning applications is going under a review right now, make it a little bit more simplified, common day language, less legalese. So that'll be good to see. But I'm wondering if the city, if we ever have property that we want to dispose of, and I think we're doing a good job in terms of the options available, but I'm wondering whether or not we should be looking at actually providing signage at the location to ensure that residents in the area know that this is city property, it's up for disposal, as well as if people are passing by and are looking, you know, perhaps to invest or build or what have you, whether we should have signage at the property.
So you're talking about in addition to the typically the agent for sale sign that's on that property?
Well, I think the problem is that it would have an agent for sale sign, but unless somebody goes to look up that it's city property, you would not know.
Okay.
And so if there was a way that we could have signage that it was Belleville, City Belleville property, up for sale through our realtor, but at least know that it's city property.
Okay, let's ask Director McDonald if he has any comments on that.
Through the chair to Councillor Carr and really for all of council, so appreciate the comments about formalizing what we've been doing. I think it's important. It gives clarity to council and administration, but also to the public that are involved in the process. Signage, interesting during the development of the policy and the bylaw. Ultimately, back and forth a little bit. We currently do sign when we're doing stop, up, close, dispose of properties of that nature. There's a couple rural ones that are underway now, Zion Road, Casey Road in particular. The challenge we've had with those signs, outside of the traditional real estate sign by the city's contract realtor, is we're not getting comment or interest. We're getting just straight questions, which is fine, but it's not productive. And so I think what we're looking at, and certainly I'll take this back to our new property manager for discussion and certainly dependent on the direction of council. I think our better chance is probably to have a conversation with our contract realtor and amend their sign, either to extend it to the bottom, somehow identify when it's disposition of property, the sale of property that is city-owned, an asset of the corporation and thereby the public. We can probably do better and get more traction that way than putting up a second sign. We've also found that our signs, very often are disappearing very quickly. So where we might only need 10, we generally get 20, and it takes time to go out and maintain those signs. And so the real estate signs are generally more robust than what we're putting up. We're using Corplast, they're using, particularly in a rural setting, using a much larger, robust sign. So I think probably the easier thing is to have an amendment to contract realtor's sign on the property. I don't discount the importance of it.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that suggestion. I think that would work well. I think it's just important to know that, for residents to know that it is their asset, it is up for sale. And if they do have questions, at least they know what's going on. I know in the past, we've had some land where we've stopped up and closed a portion of a road that we weren't maintaining. And it was taken by surprise for area residents, particularly out in the rural area where they've become accustomed to going for a hike through that area and off into the woods, and then suddenly it's stopped up and closed. Then it becomes private property, and it was more of what happened. And so I think it's just an awareness campaign, not necessarily to be an obstacle to what we're trying to achieve, but just simply to have that level of transparency. So thank you, that's a great idea.
Good. Yeah, I wonder what the impact of putting city-owned property on the realtor's sign would do. Would that appreciate the value or would that depreciate the value? I guess we'll have to see, so good. Anyone else on this item? I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. 8A2, sale and setting off of fireworks and pyrotechnics. It is the special effects, sale and setting off of fireworks and pyrotechnic special events, specs. And the resolution is that pursuant to the Director, Fire and Emergency Services, report number DFES 2022-06, sale and setting off of fireworks and pyrotechnic special effects, a bylaw to amend the fireworks bylaw number 9106 be prepared for Council's consideration, and that a bylaw to amend the fees and charges bylaw number 2021-195 to add the applicable fees be prepared for Council's consideration. Councillor Thompson is moving it, seconded by Councillor Feeney. It's on the floor. Anyone have any questions or comments on this? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Deputy Chief Smith, we blew right through it for you, so there you go. 8A3, Bachelor of Science in Nursing Registered Nurse Scholarship Program with Loyalist College. It is the Economic Development ECDEV report number 2022-18, and the resolution is that pursuant to the Manager of Economic and Strategic Initiatives report number ECDEV 2022-18, an agreement between the City of Belleville and Loyalist College regarding the implementation of the Bachelor of Science in Nursing scholarship program be entered into, and that a bylaw be prepared for Council's consideration, and that the program be funded from the approved 2022 health care recruitment budget to a maximum of $50,000. Moved by Councillor Sandison, seconded by Councillor Feeney. Any questions or discussion on this? Councillor Carr.
Oh, yes, thank you. You know, at first blush, it looks like a great program. We all know that primary health care, and including nursing, is required across communities in Ontario. Hospitals are suffering with low staff. I do note, though, that I don't think it's an issue necessarily of getting people to apply to the program as much as it is the job retention after they've graduated. I'm looking at a CBC article that just came out recently. The Council of Ontario Universities says more than 13,000 people have applied to a university nursing program in 2022. That's up around 8% compared to 2021, and 25% increase compared to 28 and 2019. Then colleges have received a record number of applicants to nursing diploma programs this year. Going back to 2013, more than 12,000 people have applied to programs in 2022, a 14% increase over 2021, and a 25% increase compared to 2018, so pre-pandemic. And then just locally, I'm told, I got some information from staff today, last year the nursing program at Loyalist had 35 applicants, knowing that the first 2 years is here locally, year 3 and 4 was at Brock University, and they said that, you know, when they go off to Brock, they essentially don't come back this way. Now that we have a 4-year Bachelor of Science in Nursing program locally, those students that apply to that program will be here for their entire 4 years, and will then be able to take advantage of Quinte Healthcare access for clinical opportunities, whether it be BGH, Trenton Memorial Hospital, even over in Prince Edward County. And then I know that the college obviously has other areas in which they provide that clinical experience. So last year there was 35 applicants. This year, with the Bachelor of Science, we're up to 81. So I don't think Loyalist has a problem attracting the nursing students, so the scholarship is great. My concern is the retention that follows. And so we'll be offering up to 5 students $10,000 towards their education. But essentially the retention piece is that once they've completed their probationary period with an employer in Belleville, then they have then made whole and received their entire scholarship funds. I'm just concerned that we're not putting the target money where it should be. And it's not to take away from Loyalists and the partnership we have, but I really think we need to have conversations with Quinte Healthcare to talk about the retention portion of their workforce. We're seeing more and more, and we're seeing this not just at Quinte Healthcare, but across the board, where people are leaving hospitals because they're understaffed and don't want to work in an understaffed environment, which then creates an understaffed environment. So it's cyclical in nature, and as a result, we all suffer when there's the community, there are the frontline staff that are lower and depleted. So I guess it's a long way of saying is this really good value for money to attract students to come here when we know that we've seen 35 applicants up to 81. They're going to do 4 years of clinical experience here, particularly with nursing programs. You're in hands-on year 1. So as they make the rotations through the various departments at Quinte Healthcare, get to know them as an employer, or other places that employ healthcare workers, nurses in particular, the whole point is to keep them. And my concern is that the retention piece is just missing in the long term, given the numbers here.
Okay, so you're concerned that the requirement to work to commit here until they complete their probationary period isn't long enough. Yeah, so let me just step back. You know, I think we had a significant discussion about this during the operating budget where we allocated this funding for this year. And the intention that we have behind the program is we want nursing students, particularly those that are going to be graduating from here in Belleville, to stay in Belleville after they graduate. We don't want them to leave and go to their communities. If we step back even one more step, the reason why we are looking at this opportunity is because while we have had a very successful physician recruitment program since 2006, and particularly this year, we're already up to 12 doctors that we have signed in the year 2022, and we're in negotiations with 2 more that we hopefully will have some good success. We're at a stage now where we're not going to ever have enough doctors for everyone to have a primary care physician directly. That world is different today. Back in 2006, we were the first ones to step into this environment where we provided financial incentives in exchange for requiring a certain number of years of service. Well, everybody's in that field now. We're competing against everybody. We're not there. This is now the next phase that we're looking forward to because nurses are getting more delegated acts. There are more work that they can do to play a role of primary physicians, including at the nurse practitioner-led clinic. And so when Loyalist College got the news, the great news, that they were able to issue degrees, we thought, what a great partnership that we can work with. They are already very used to attracting students, finding those that have financial need, finding bursaries and scholarships and those types of things to connect them. Manager Karen Post has gone through the process, has negotiated with Loyalists. We had a couple of meetings that I was in attendance as well, talking about the idea in concept, and we believe, based on those discussions, that if someone finds a job here and works through their probationary period, they will want to stay here. And that's why this program is structured this way, that $10,000 will allow them to get some funding up front while they're going to school, funding when they finish the school, and the remainder of it when they meet their probationary requirements. This is for more than just about nurses that are at Quinte Healthcare or the other sites. This is for nurses right across the spectrum. You know, we have a really successful nurse practitioner-led clinic, which is at capacity in Belleville, and we're working on another facility for us to be able to expand that role. These are people that can work there. So you know, I asked the same question, I think, last week. Manager Post can tell you that I said, you know, is the probationary period long enough? And the feeling is that it is, particularly for the initial tranche of applicants that we'll give the funding to. My concerns are more around the numbers. And what I mean by that is I would like to see us have a much more aggressive or a robust intake in year one. Certainly we can do 5 students in year one, but we should be doing 20 this year, this fall. There are 83 applicants that are now in that program. A number of them are starting their first year, some are in their second year, but we will have students in their third and fourth year in the RN program. I think those are the ones that we should be talking to now, because they will graduate next year or the year after. And that is the best turnaround for that time, and we can deal with it. We can talk about that later on if council's in general in support of that, and we can talk about how to make those numbers fit. But we do have to get our heads wrapped around, Councillor Carr, your question about whether or not till the end of the probationary period with a local employer in the Belleville, in the city of Belleville region, is the way that we want to go with that. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Thank you. No, I'm not objecting to the program, and certainly we've got to start somewhere. I just see that as we unfold this program, that we make sure we're targeting to the right areas in terms of retention and also creating that partnership with Quinte Healthcare. Graduating with a Bachelor of Science in Nursing will qualify you to the registered nurse level. As far as nurse practitioners go, you're looking at a master's program followed by the NP program. So an extra 3 years of school on top of that. And those are things I think we may need to look at, particularly if these students decide that they want to continue on with their education, perhaps committing to a longer road towards the nurse practitioner, where you get into that primary health care, where you're providing diagnostic services, treatment services, prescription services that a general practitioner would do. Like I said, we've got to start somewhere. It's good. I was just a little concerned about the probationary period being so small. I know that like us in trying to attract doctors, the healthcare providers out there in the hospital are competing for a limited amount of resources, and so we're all being competitive. I do agree with you. These are my words, not yours. I don't think that the Ontario government wants to provide everybody with a physician. They have caps on their medical school. There seems to be more bureaucratic red tape when it comes to foreign trained doctors. We have to continue to advocate for that, obviously. But I just wanted to raise that concern. We'll see how this unfolds and go from there. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else on this item? Councillor McCaw.
Thank you, through you. And I would agree. I feel as though looking at this, that probationary period is not long enough. I don't feel comfortable with that time. I would like to see that out further, like a longer term. What that term looks like, I don't know. Is it something that we can model like our doctor recruitment program, whereby you have to maintain a position in Belleville, I don't know, 3-5 years, or repay the grant? I don't know, but from my perspective, it concerns me when I see this. I see a lot of opportunity for free education and a lot of opportunity to take that free education elsewhere. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Sandison.
Thank you,
Councillor Tully.
through the chair. So I certainly agree with the comments from Councillor Carr and McCaw in terms of the time frame. And the market, it's sort of a buyer's market in terms of nurses currently. And when we were at AMO, we heard that long-term care facilities across the province are also at a point of crisis, in that the expectation from the number of baby boomers that are going to be infiltrating long-term care between now and 2029 is going to require all of the long-term care facilities across the province, which have about 18,000 employees, to double. And when you think that a doctor takes 10 years, I think a nurse practitioner is 6 years, and an RN is 4 years. There's going to be demand for at least the next 10 years of a fairly scarce resource. Now, that said, we're not putting forward the money that we're putting into doctor recruitment, so it's not as expensive an investment from the city. But I do think we need to secure, and I don't know what the number is, because these resources are going to be very portable and in high demand. So I think we need to put something in there that's a little stronger. And, you know, I would throw maybe 30 months, 2.5 years maybe as a sort of a thought. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Good conversation tonight. I appreciate Loyalists with the partnership on this. I think it's fair to say we've all been out in the last few weeks, and what I'm speaking to the residents of Belleville is the number one thing on their mind is healthcare. We know that there's close to 15,000 people in our city without a doctor. 15,000. Those numbers are from good sources. I think it's really important that we support this program and fund. We see what's happening in Campbellford. We had hospitals in Ottawa this summer, Bowmanville, other municipalities. We heard about this, as Councillor Sanderson said, at AMO a month ago in Ottawa. Healthcare really the backbone, along with schools, for any community. That's why people come to your community, knowing that there's good healthcare and good schools and good quality of life. Arm Prior, which is a bedroom community just outside of Ottawa, last week had a program where they took 8 nurses to sign up, and they paid them $25,000, because Arm Prior, bedroom community and a growing community to Ottawa, there's a growing concern that they don't have enough staff. So I am always going to support any new initiative with healthcare, because that's what's resonating with me at the door. And it's the cost of doing business. It's a new way. I had a meeting last week with Dr. Andrew Forbes from Belleville. And this area has numerous teams out trying to reach out to doctors and nurses and try to come to Belleville, and there's that financial incentive to come to our community or communities around us. And when Dr. Forbes graduated from Western University, a Trenton boy, many years ago, he came to Belleville because of quality of life. And I asked him, how does Belleville get a doctor to come? And he said, don't forget nurse practitioners and don't forget RNs, because that's the front line of healthcare. So RNs are right in that loop. And it's quality of life. Our area is beautiful, and continue to tell our story. And I know there's been some mention tonight of RNs will come here for the first 2 years and finish their last 2 years somewhere else, but now they'll be at Loyalists for 4 years. It's up to us, this community, to engage them and make them feel this is home, and they will stay. Just like in baseball, build it, they will stay. So anything to do with healthcare, I think it's a small investment to get RNs involved and stay in our community. So I'm going to be, not that the others are not supporting this, but I'm right in on the zone on healthcare. Thank you.
And I just want to make sure that I said something earlier that I hope I was clear, that 12 physicians this term already that we've recruited. There have been 4 councils since this program has been in place. We're above 25%. We're hitting above our weight, as they say, and we have 2 more that we are hoping that we'll have some imminent news on. So if I misstated that, I want to be careful, just to be clear on it. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just want to show my support for the program like everybody else has around the table, and that's important. I too, again, would like to see some sort of a length of stay, that they stay here as a nurse, nurse practitioner, whatever it might be. I think that's important that, you know, it's great to help them through their education, that's important, but if we can get them to stay for 3, 4, 5 years, 2 years, whatever, I might encourage them to stay here many years longer. And also, one other aspect, I know the doctor recruitment, but when I injured my hand, I went to Emerge late at night. There was a doctor in the Emerge, and she was there strictly for training in the emergency room. She did not know anything about our program. So I give her my card, which I happen to have, even though I was getting stitches, and asked her to get a hold of Karen Post. But the aspect that what really scared me, that she was in Belleville doing the doctor training, but didn't know about the program. But I support this one. That's sort of a little offshoot.
Yeah, so our physician recruitment program is targeted towards family physicians.
Yeah,
not
but
those
she was
not those that are working in that the hospital is attracting to come in and cover.
No, she was there to get emergency
experience while
training,
she was going to.
But she was going to be a family physician at the end.
Yeah, so we'll I'm sure. You know, I think I'm just going to ask Ms. Post to comment now on some of the things that have been said, because there's a common theme here, some concern regarding the period of time for them to make good on their funding. And I think it would also be helpful if you could also set that up in comparison to the physician recruitment program. So we're talking now about $50,000 potentially over the full term for we're talking now about $10,000 over the full term of the scholarship for a nurse. How does that compare to the length, the amount of money that we fund physicians through the physician program, and how many years are physicians required to practice in Belleville? And just to keep some relative understanding between what we're providing to nurses, we're talking about providing to nurses, and then what their length of time to honor that commitment would be, versus what we're doing with doctors.
Thank you, Your Worship, to you and to all members of council. So I'll just summarize the family physician recruitment program that we've been offering for a number of years. So we offer a $150,000 scholarship, essentially, that's payable at $25,000 intervals once a year for 6 years. And that's in return for a 5-year commitment of service to the community. So that clock starts ticking as soon as they open their own office here in Belleville, and as you know, by far the majority of the physicians that we've attracted have stayed long past their minimum 5-year commitment. What we're suggesting through the nursing, the Bachelor of Science nursing program, is a $10,000 scholarship is what's being proposed. We've actually proposed a scholarship program that kind of pushes the limits of what the college would normally do. Typically, scholarships are given in the year in which a student starts school or is in school. They don't typically carry on much past graduation. So in order to try and deal with some of the concerns around, a nurse getting educated here, us providing a scholarship for the nursing student here, and then having them go out and find a job in another community, what we've done is spread out the scholarship to cover they get the first amount of money, $2,500, in their 3rd year. So the first year they have the option to do the university level program here in Belleville, so they get their first incentive then. The second $2,500 payable at the time that they get their license. So at the time they pass all of their exams and become licensed as a nurse. And then the final $5,000 once they have accepted a position in Belleville and passed their probation period, which is typically 6 months. We felt that was sort of the best way to stretch that scholarship out to make sure that nurse was established in a position here in Belleville. There is risk, there is with anything that we do. If council decides that they want to put in place a program that is more similar to the physician recruitment program, then it might not be a typical scholarship paid through the college. It would be an individual agreement with that nursing student that would see us advance them the funds directly. Once they've signed a legal agreement that says they will, in exchange for this funding, practice in the city of Belleville for at least the number of years council decides. So there'd be a little different format if council decided they wanted to do that, but it is certainly possible.
Yeah, so just that's important because, again, a 4-year program, $10,000 is not paying for the education. There's a significant investment for a cost of living, to rent a place, to go to, your tuition, your meal, your food, all that stuff is there while you're working through it. But it is a contribution that goes towards it. And just before I see Councillor Alsap, and I think Councillor Feeney also wants to say something, but, as we're talking about if we understand Ms. Post's point of view about the timing, and we say that we'd like to start this and see how it goes with the probation period being that item. So, in the future, it would be years 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you're here already 4 years, you get a job while you're here. You go through the probation period. You're now 4.5, 5 years in this community. It's a good place to live. You want to stay, and we're pretty confident that they will stay here. Because this is brand new and because the program is starting, there's an opportunity for us to also go to students who are in years 3 and 4, which are going to be graduating sooner. We don't have to wait 4 years for them to graduate. We can actually go sooner, and we can, it won't be the 4-year investment of time, but still it's going to be 2 years. And they've already done likely 2 years already here. So we're still getting there, and we end up getting to do it. There's a couple options. We can do 5 recruits and fund it all up front. So the $50,000 would fully fund all 5 recruits, and we could do that starting this year. Or we could fund the $2,500 per person, which means that we'd be able to sign 20 recruits in 2022. And then we'd have to fund it again next year and the year after, like we do that, and that's similar to what we're doing with the physician recruitment program. And that would be the model that I would recommend, that we do this, and we can sign 20 nurses, people in the nursing program this year, and then we'll find the funds through the budget process next year to fund their ongoing, or say we don't want to put anything extra in to sign anymore, so we'll just continue to fund it as we go along. Those were there. There is, if we do this schedule, this option of the 20 recruits in 2022, then there would be a shortfall in year 3, and so we'll have to look at it. But I expect that everything we've done this term, as it comes to the physician recruitment program and this one, we understand that we need to invest in this, that the community need is there, and that we will put more resources into this program as we move forward. So that's some more information. I'm going to go to Councillor Alsop first, and then I'll come back for a second round on that. So Councillor Alsop.
Thank you, Chair, and I think that breakdown was important. And, from my perspective, I like the idea of going after those students who are in their 3rd or 4th year so that we get results a little bit quicker, and that we do the sort of more broader approach of 20 recruits at the $2,500 a year. I think, the way that I would like to see the structure, and I'm not sure how my colleagues would feel about it, is that it would be available as an agreement to students who complete their 4 years in Belleville, and we would pay them $2,500 a year over the next 4 years for their commitment to work in Belleville. And so that way we can recruit people who have already done their first 2 years, and they're either going to 3rd or 4th year, and we can say, listen, once you graduate, having spent 4 years in Belleville already, over the next 4 years while you're working in Belleville as an RN, we'll give you an additional $2,500 a year for those 4 years. And that, I think, would serve to incentivize them to stay in the community even longer, and would be sort of more suitable in my mind than to do it this way, where after that 6-month period, you would be able to shop that around. I think that would be, and when we talk about the free education, so we see here $48,000 in expenses for a BSCN, not including accommodation. So really, we're talking about less than 20% of their education. And as Councillor Carr, I believe, said, there's 81 recruits in that program already at Loyalist this year, or 81 students enrolled. So the problem doesn't seem to be getting students to Loyalist. It's how do we keep them there after they're done at Loyalist. So I would prefer that the agreement be structured for 4 years after they're done.
Okay. So not to be argumentative with you, but I have a question for you. So right now, we're doing $150,000 for physicians with a 5-year commitment to stay. If we were to do the suggestion of the 4 years, we'd be giving $10,000 to get someone to stay for 4 years. And I'm not sure how you feel about it. The information I'm getting is that's not really enough of an investment to get people to make that commitment of time. You know, there's a couple things we can do. We can increase the amount that we provide, so more than $10,000, but that means less opportunities. Or we can use the model that Ms. Post has negotiated and say, you know, at the first year, we're going to give you a little bit of help to cover your tuition expenses and your incidentals and all those things. When you finish your education, you get the next installment, and then when you finish the probationary period, then you get that final one. It gives them a little bit more on that. You know, again, my feeling is I'm not sure how many people would agree to stay for 4 years post-graduation at the $10,000. Does that change your mind at all on that?
Not particularly. I do think that more money would be an incentive, obviously, as it always is. You know, obviously, medical school for doctors is longer and more expensive, and I think that factors into the tuition and the cost recovery there. You know, certainly we could look at, so if we're talking about 2,500 times 20, we could look at $5,000 a year for 4 years for 10.
Yep.
That might be more in line and more of an incentive to those
But
graduates.
you and I both like the number 20 a lot better than 10.
Well, but if it's going to be effective, I'd like 10,
fair enough.
10
Yeah.
committed more than
For sure.
not.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's go to Councillor Feeney, and then we'll do a second round here.
Thank you very much. I'm very much in support of the going for the 20 and looking at students that are already 2 years into the program as well as new ones. That way we can get more nurses quicker. I think once they've been here for 4 years, and going back to Councillor Kelly's comment about, you know, they have been living here and they will be part of the community at that point. I just think it would be a better idea for us to try to go for the 20 now, whether they're already in school or we're going to start new ones. But I think it's very important for us to do that. And if you're committed to being a nurse or a nurse practitioner, and you've already lived here for 4 years, and you've got a job, that's the other part. I know that there's competition for those jobs, absolutely. But I like the original concept of the 20. Thank you.
Thank you. On a second round, Councillor McCaw.
Thank you, through you. And I too like the 20 initially. I think it gets us where we need to go quicker. The only thing I get concerned about is then are we committing the next council to something? And will that council continue to fund this? Or what mechanism will be in place to ensure that the upcoming council will continue this?
Well, I would say that we've done that with the physician recruitment program. You know, we've provided a number of scholarships for students, and the next council will have to honor it. You know, but that happened for us as well. We came into office with a number of commitments the city had made, whether it be on physician recruitment or funding for the Belleville General Hospital Foundation or other charities that we've done, and it's similar to that.
Thank you. And just further to that, I know personally if I was, up and coming on council, I would carry it forward. I just, I don't assume anything from anyone. And I'm probably a little bit more suspect, a little bit more cautious than some, but that is something that plays in my mind. That said, I'm not going to not support it now. These are just the concerns I have. And another question I did have, maybe for Ms. Post, having a child in a university, I note that when she receives scholarship, then she has reductions in other grants and loans that she may have because she's received a scholarship. So as much as she's getting money in one hand, it's being taken away in the other. Is there any way is there anything in place we can make sure that doesn't happen to a student?
Ms. Post.
Through his worship to Councillor McCaw. What we've done, we certainly faced that challenge with the physician recruitment program as well, and what we've done is simply said to the students that's for you to research and satisfy yourselves about. We don't know the individual implications for each student, particularly when it comes to income tax and so on, because there sometimes are some implications with that. So we have simply provided the funding and left it to the student to determine what impact it may have on any other funding they might be getting. We're not always made aware of what else they have applied for or received.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carr.
Thank you. It's interesting, we're spending all this time talking about nurses, probably more than nurses are talked about in the Ontario legislature where it should be. But if the province stays silent, it's going to be our issue to deal with, so here we are. Two questions, one through to Manager Post. Because Loyalist is going to a 4-year Bachelor of Science here, so the students starting this year will do all 4 years here. There was reference to 3rd and 4th year students. Are they transitioning back to Loyalist, or do we know whether they're continuing their program at Brock?
Yeah. Manager Post?
Through His Worship to Councillor Carr. It's my understanding that there are the majority of students that could have gone to Brock this year that have chosen to come to Belleville. I don't believe all, but the majority have chosen to finish their schooling here.
Okay, and that's important too, because again, without the scholarship incentive, they have decided to return here and finish their education at Loyalist. Now that program's in existence, so that's great to hear. We're throwing around some numbers and some funding commitments in the future. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Director of Finance, could I get some comments just on some of the things that we're spitballing around the table here, just to have some assurances from Finance, who watches our dollars and cents?
Okay, through your worship to council. I think if you will recall, we approved $50,000 for this program when we did the 2022 operating budget, with the details to come back to council as they have today. The issue that we have, and that Karen has promoted a plan where we're signing 5 doctors. We have sufficient funding in place going forward for that. When we approved the issue in April, we actually approved $50,000 that was baked into the base budget. There was an annual amount approved for that, so there is $50,000 in place going forward. That's enough to effectively fund 5 doctors or 5 nurses every year going forward. So you could effectively add 5 this year, another 5 next year, another 5 going forward. The other option that has been presented is signing 20, which we certainly can do. The issue with signing 20 is that in year 3, the way that the distribution of funds is being proposed, we wind up with a $50,000 shortfall in the 3rd year. We don't have sufficient funding approved by council to make those payments. So I did work some numbers this afternoon when there was some discussion prior to the meeting today. And if we went with 4 years, if we distributed the funds over 4 years, you could sign 20 now and basically distribute $2,500. And I'm not suggesting when it starts and stops, but basically you could distribute $2,500 a year to each of those 20 recipients for 4 years without requiring a further adjustment to the budget in the future.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to be sure as we deal with it at budget, and then we get the issue here today and we get excited and get ahead of ourselves. And I agree with Councillor McCaw too. We don't want to get ourselves where we're committing other councils, particularly handing them a deficit, saying here, good luck, try to squeeze it in. So by the sounds of it, we can fit it in. So, and again, I don't critique what is being done here today. We have to start somewhere. It was just that it caught my eye based on the registration that getting the students to come here to take the training and getting people involved in healthcare from a training perspective isn't the issue. It's holding on to them after they're trained that is key. So, thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else on this? Councillor Sanderson and then Councillor Kelly.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, to Manager Post. Of the students that are enrolled or soon to be enrolled at Loyalist, do we know how many are actually in the 3rd year and in the 4th year? I know you said majority, but do you actually have a hard number?
Through His Worship to Councillor Sanderson. Yeah, so I don't have all of the numbers, but they have confirmed 81 first year. There were 35 in the first year the year before. There are 50 3rd year students currently, and 38 of those have come from their bridging program. 12 remained from their old collaborative program. Yes.
And is there anybody in 4th?
At the college level, no, not yet, no.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Councillor Kelly?
Thank you. Through your worship, good conversation tonight, and as Councillor Carr mentioned, this is really important for the community, and it's really, the province should be talking about this. I know we're talking about the 20 students and getting their scholarship money or their little bonus for committing to Belleville. As I said before, always going to support new ways to attract healthcare, frontline healthcare workers. They're educated. We know the strain on doctors, and we know the challenges that the nurse practitioner-led clinic in Belleville has. They could use more nurse practitioners. They work around the clock. RNs work around the clock. So it's not an easy gig. And I just wanted, there was some talk tonight about doing the payout maybe after they graduate, and I can appreciate that kind of thinking, but having 2 children in university, and when they get, my daughter was lucky enough to get a few $1,000 scholarship from a business when she was in her second year and first year at university, and she wanted the money then because they're students, and I think there's a mindset that after they graduate, then everything opens up, and if we can get them to commit while they're in university, and same as my son, he got some scholarship money, a few $1,000s a year to go to U of T and study, all of that helps them, and they want that money now. So that's all I just wanted to add about that. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so this is what I think, from what I'm getting the sense of the room, and people can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we are in general agreement with this project, and we'd like to see the 20 positions this year. By approving this resolution, we're going to have a bylaw that will come back to us, the actual one, so manager posts can take the direction that we've got, that we want the 20. So the way that I could sort of see this happening, Loyalist College will approach those 30, how many in third year? Sorry? There are 50 students in third year this year. So Loyalist College will approach them and find out if there are 20 of them who are interested. Hopefully there's more than 20, but let's say that there was less than 20. Let's say there was 15 out of the 50. Then they would go to the second year and try to find the remaining, 5 to get to that 20. So we'll leave them, and then we'll have that bylaw, which will come back to the next council meeting, and perhaps we may even have some names that we'll be able to enter into contracts for this year with them, or scholarships, I should say, and then we'll move forward. Anybody objecting to that? Okay, so then if we approve the resolution as is being presented, that will allow Manager Post to go ahead. We understand the information we've received from Director Hines and what that will mean in year 3. But this is a very exciting day for us because, again, this is the next evolution of trying to provide as much primary care as possible. All the comments on this around the table have been very, very good. At the end of the day, it's not just doctors that work in our medical system, it's everyone that's involved in it. And we can't be expected as a municipality to fund the entire medical system. But it's so important for us to maintain services for people, and this is a really proud day, I think, for all of us, and we're very excited. So with that, the motion's been moved in second. I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. And we look forward to having that bylaw come back to us at the next meeting, and maybe even some names. So that's exciting. Thank you very much, everybody. 8A4, the last of the 8A items, single source purchase of holiday market structures, the ECDEV 2022-17 item, and the resolution is that in accordance with section 30.3, sole and single sourcing, approval and reporting of the city's purchasing bylaw number 2021-99, the quotation from Brubacher Sheds be accepted for the purchase of 10 market structures for the total cost of $79,947.50, and that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to sign the acceptance agreement on behalf of the corporation of the city of Belleville, and that the city clerk be authorized to fix the corporate seal. Moved by Councillor Sandison, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Any questions or discussion? All in favor, it's carried. We'll now move to 8B, consent items, where council may adopt consent items by one motion, but prior to consideration of such motion, members may request that specific items be removed from consideration under such motion, and council shall consider such items individually. I'll go around the table, starting with Councillor McCaw. Councillor Sandison.
No, thank you.
Councillor Alsop.
No, thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
No, thank you.
Councillor Carr.
8B9 and 8B10, please.
Okay, Councillor Feeney.
8B1.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
No, thank you.
All right. So the resolution is that the consent items to be approved with the exception of items 8B1, 8B9, and 8B10. Moved by Councillor Alsop, seconded by Councillor Feeney. All in favor? It's carried. 8B1. It is the recommendation report for proposed amendment to the Belleville official plan and zoning bylaw number 10245 for 188, 190, and 196 Dundas Street East and 120, 120A, and 126 Burnham Street, City of Belleville. It's a very long motion, so I'm going to just summarize it by saying that it is a resolution from the Planning Advisory Committee to amend the official plan, pending ministerial approval of the new official plan that the province is considering, and that we rezone the subject lands from general commercial zone and residential 4th density zone to residential 7th density zone with special provisions to reduce the required lot frontage, lot area per dwelling, front yard depth, exterior side yard depth, landscaped open space, number of parking spaces, distance between parking area and habitable rooms, interior side and rear lot lines, and to increase the rear yard depth and maximum permitted lot coverage to permit the development of a 38 unit apartment building, and that the bylaw to approve an amendment to Belleville's official plan in accordance with the provisions of Section 21 of the Planning Act be prepared for Council's consideration, and that a bylaw amending zoning bylaw number 10245 being a bylaw to regulate the use of land and the height, bulk, location, size, floor area, spacing, character, and use of buildings be prepared by Council's consideration. Moved by Councillor Feeney, seconded by Councillor Alsop. Councillor Feeney, you had asked this item to be pulled.
Yes, I just wanted this to be moved as written. I'm very familiar with this area. I used to live on Charles Street. And for someone who hasn't had a car for 20 years, I can tell you that the transit system is excellent. There's amenities such as pharmacies, doctors, dentists, life labs. It is a perfect location. It's 38 units, 30% of which are going to be affordable, designated affordable. So I think it's a perfect location, and I really like to see this getting going as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Alsop.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just want to jump on my colleagues' comments there about the project. It's a great project that promotes density in the urban area, which is wonderful, as opposed to sprawling outwards. We're building up, and I think that's exactly what we need to be doing in our urban core. 12 units of affordable housing here as well. There were some concerns about reduced parking, but staff feel comfortable that we'll be able to make that work. And so it's an exciting development that adds more units to that area and 12 more affordable units for the city. So all good all around.
Okay. Councillor Sandison.
Thank you. Through the chair, so I'll just add to those comments because it was discussed in great detail at the Planning Advisory Committee meeting as well. And this is not only is this an infill project, but all 38 units are rental units, and they've been able to take advantage of a portion of the community improvement program. So we know that these are going to be rental units that are available, and we've got a shortage across the spectrum. This fills that need quite nicely.
Great. Anyone else? Good. I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Excellent. Thank you very much. We'll move now to 8B9, which is parking enforcement for side street and after hours, service level change. And the resolution is that Council received the Director of Corporate Services Clerk's report number DCS 2022-31, parking enforcement, side street and after hours, service level change. Moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Alsop. Councillor Carr, you would raise this. Go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you. Through you to the Director of Corporate Services, and I see our contract is essentially for business hours, but in the report it does say that the current contract does provide for after-hour patrol and enforcement using the vendor's vehicle on an as-needed basis and as directed by the city. What would it take to have that extra service due to complaint generation. Please.
Director McDonald.
Through the chair to Councillor Carr. So you're correct, the contract currently contains that provision. It's simply written direction to the service provider. The challenge we have is it takes that mobile patrol off the street during the day. And during the day, I can tell you that mobile patrol that is currently running around the city for all side street patrols, the entire city, is very busy. Some of the identified areas that have been of concern to council, where we've put increased provisions morning, afternoon, kind of timely with all the discussion of nurses. The proximity to Quinte Healthcare keeps that side street patrol busy for better part of half a day, every day. So it's not that it couldn't be done without extending the service, amending the contract for service. I think staff's recommendation is to work with the contractor, extend the service, get a second patrol vehicle. There would be no shortage of work. I can assure you the complaints that you get, we get. We probably get a little bit more. It probably takes them a lot of patience being eroded before they come to you with the complaints because they're not getting what they feel is correct level of service from us, the enforcement side of the business. The vendor has been approached and is certainly open to extending the level of service. From my perspective, that would go a lot farther to addressing our problem, which is not diminishing. If anything, it's getting worse. People work from home, cars stay there more often. There are more multi-generational families in some of our newer subdivisions. So again, the recommendation from staff would be to attempt to extend the level of service rather than just redirect the current service provider during the day.
If I could then, and I appreciate that. So then I guess the question is can you do that now, or is it something that has to wait till we get into a budget cycle? Because obviously if we're increasing the level of service, there's cost. Is there funding available somewhere that could increase that now, or do we need to wait for the next budget cycle?
Through the chair and much to the Director of Finance's chagrin, I think, depending on what that level of service looks like and the vendor is able to provide, there is an offsetting revenue that comes back on the other end of it. But the reality is we have a relatively healthy, not robust, but healthy enough reserve currently that is a potential funding source for an extended level of service. But certainly if council directs staff, we'll work with finance to find the appropriate funding for what would be really the fourth quarter of this year, running towards a budget next year, where we would have also a more accurate picture of what that level of service looks like, what it costs, and what revenue comes back. As noted in the report, the revenue generated by ticketing and enforcement would certainly be very high at the beginning, and then would plateau as people become aware of the enforcement and we gain a little bit of compliance. If anybody's driven around the city though, compliance, from my perspective, will never be at 100%. It's just the nature of on-street parking, and I think it's here to stay. So again, our recommendation would be to extend that level of service and work with finance to find the appropriate funding source to end this year as we proceed towards the 2023 budget.
Okay, thank you. So with that, if I could amend the motion to include that staff look at increasing the level of service. So I'll throw that out as an amendment.
And can I suggest, Councillor Carr, that that for the 2023 operating budget, that
it be identified as an issue?
Well, what I'm saying is I think we have to take a hard look at our parking enforcement program. Currently, we have our bylaw staff that are typically dealing with property standards and some other things. But I think that with some of the reorganization we're doing, we should take a hard look at parking enforcement and how it's being done and whether or not there are any recommended changes. So if you would just, I think we'll get through the rest of this year with your resolution, and then also that we ask for the 2023 operating budget include a recommendation for moving forward with on-street parking issues in the city. Is that fair?
I'm agreed.
Okay.
Yep.
Director McDonald, do you have that in wording well enough to be able to draft the motion? So everyone that clear on the motion? We're receiving it and we're going to do those two things. Anyone else on this item? Councillor Thompson.
Just clarification, and I think it's great where we're moving forward. Where I get some complaints, and all councillors do, and I'm sure, and all staff, is the weekend and the on-street parking on side streets after midnight, cars are left there. With this extended service, is that going to look after that complaint? And of course, some of it is the weekend parking down by the hospital.
So you're talking about the rest of this quarter, and then
Yes.
ostensibly for the first part of 2023 until we get to the operating budget.
Yeah.
So Director McDonald, would that include weekend coverage?
Through the chair to Councillor Thompson, from our perspective, if we're amending the contract and changing the level of service, in-house, we've already had the discussion that it should be evenings and weekends. Just to extend it in the evening overnight is not going to solve the problem.
No.
What we're seeing is a lot of complaints generated over the weekend.
Yes.
And granted, the Belleville Police Service has their hands full as it is, so to expect them to, put that into a priority call list is not reasonable at this point, based on our discussion. So our discussion with the vendor would be, we're looking for evening, overnight, and weekend service, not just a continuation of from the end of service, Monday to Friday for 8 additional hours. It would be directed by us to them, and again, we've had preliminary discussions with them as how we can address this problem. It's growing, if anything, so I think that is the reality.
Okay, and I'm going to speak for Councillor Millette, because if he would hear, he'd be talking about Tin Town, because that's where a lot of the overnight parking down on that one, the mains going to the parking lot there. That's a big, serious problem down there. So I just encourage that, and we get calls about cars parked on side streets at midnight, and there's 3 or 4 cars, and they're parked there all the time. So if that's covering it, I think this is great. This is a great idea. Our parking really needs to be looked at on more of a full-time basis so that we can correct some of this parking problem that we have in our city. Thank you.
Good. Anyone else? Councillor Sanderson.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, just to build on what Councillor Thompson said, it's not only is it side streets, but it's also north of the 401. We see it in our subdivisions. I get at least 1 or 2 complaints a month. We've most recently Signal Brewery location, parking there has come up again. So I really think that we need to bolster it up. And I think, as we touched on the finances, I think this thing could even be break even, right? In terms of whatever the additional cost is on the contract, we will probably make it up on revenue, at least for the first, as you mentioned, for the first year, perhaps 2. Thank you.
If Director Hines had $1 for every time someone promised her that, she'd be a wealthy woman. It'll pay for itself. It'll pay for itself. Anyone else? I know Councillor Carr wants a second round. Okay, Councillor Carr, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't really get to speak to the motion at the front end. Obviously, everybody's excited about parking enforcement, which is great to see. And again, I think it needs to be said, though, just for the public watching, this is not about revenue generation. If we break even, we'll all celebrate. But the point being is to correct the behavior. And, I want to take a couple moments just to thank a couple residents who have been persistent with me in raising the concerns. And as Councillor Sanderson said, we have a couple of subdivisions. One in particular, I'll identify, Heritage Park. I consistently get complaints about cars parking too close to stop signs, blocking sidewalks. And in this day and age, when we talk about accessibility, we shouldn't have cars blocking sidewalks. We can't have people walking on the street. It's unsafe. That's why those sidewalks are there and designed. And, I guess I get a little frustrated at times through zoning and what have you, and the way we live in the world we live in as far as planning goes, that we jam everything in, and we're expected to do that. But what happens is people lose parking spaces in driveways. Driveways become smaller. And you look at some driveways that really should be intended for 4 cars, lose 2 spots because of the sidewalk. They feel that they can just park there because it's their driveway, but then they're blocking a sidewalk that perhaps somebody with a mobility issue cannot get from A to B. And so it's those things that we see that are the problem, that we just have to understand that We don't live in our own world. We live in a world with everyone else, and we just have to make sure there's some compliance. So I appreciate the fact that council is receptive to this, and also the staff to look at a creative solution. I know it could easily have just been lobbed to 2023 and say we'll deal with it then, but recognizing that there is an issue and that the residents are expecting this level of service will go a long way. And I know that we get the demand in the hospital area, but then it shifts in the evening to the other residential areas and some of those areas where people are bringing home vehicles. Councillor McCaw is going to talk a little bit later about a lot of people living in one home. They all come with cars, and if they run out of driveway space, they're going on the street. So it's just about making the neighborhood safe. So thank you.
Good, okay. I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. 8B10 is the City of Belleville Grant Committee report, and the resolution is that council approve the recommendations of the Grant Committee as outlined in the Director of Finance Treasurer's report number DDF 2022-08, City of Belleville Grant Committee. Moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Feeney. Councillor Carr, you raised this item. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. And I just wanted to point out that in that recommendation is that the Grant Committee is recommending to council that we suspend the acceptance of any grant applications for the remaining of 2022. We have spent all the money that council has allocated, and so I just want to say, first of all, thank you. It's been a pleasure to chair that committee, and I want to thank my committee members for being engaged, for being creative. We have limited funds. We always have more applications, but we've been able to work collaboratively together to come up with solutions. I'd like to say a special thanks to the Finance Department for helping us work those numbers to make sure that we can maximize the benefit to these organizations that are doing great work in our community, and also watching it, though, to make sure that we're not going over that line. And I also want to thank other staff that attend from Recreation, Culture, and Community Services, Transportation, Operational Services, that provide all those supports for the many events that go on, and that this term we've monetized all that municipal time, so there's a budget allocation there, but they do great work to set up and tear down, and sometimes I think we take for granted the fact that when we show up things are just set up, but it does create a lot of work for staff, and staff have been very eager and receptive to address all these community organizations. And then lastly, I'd just like to say thank you to the community organizations that take the time to apply, and certainly, collectively we're able to provide great funds to many organizations. So, thank you.
Good. Councillor Kelly.
Through you, Mayor, just a quick comment about the Grant Committee. Thanks to Chair Carr and the rest from council that sit on that committee. A few weeks ago, Debbie Margetson reached out to me from Belleville. She's a part of Say It Out Loud, and was wondering where they could get funding. I suggested to Debbie that they apply to the Grant Committee, and we all get those calls throughout the year. And they applied, and they were awarded last week $2,500. Eric Hargreaves, who's a local individual, is a National Canadian Alliance of Mental Health winner, one of 7 Canadians to get this distinguished honor, and he's part of Say Out Loud, and that organization has been in Belleville for 30 years, youth-driven LGBTQ+ for the youth in Belleville, 30 years, ages 14 to mid-20s. It's a peer support group, safe place, and 8 members of Say Out Loud will be in Ottawa with Eric when he gets his national award, one of 7 Canadians to receive this award, Tuesday, October the 5th. The youth had no way of getting there, but thanks to the Grant Committee, they'll be in Ottawa with Eric. Well done. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. So we'll now move to 8C, council information items, and where council may adopt consent items by one motion, but prior to consideration of such motion, members may request that specific items be removed from consideration under such motion, and council shall consider such items individually. I'll go the other way around the table. Councillor Kelly.
No, thank you.
Councillor Feeney.
No, thank you.
Councillor Carr.
No, thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
No, thank you.
Councillor Alsop.
No, thank you.
Councillor Sandison.
No, thank you.
And Councillor McCaw.
No thanks.
All right, so that the agenda items be received is the motion. I need a mover. Moved by Councillor Alsop, seconded by Councillor Kelly. All in favor? It's carried. Motion to rise and report, moved by Councillor McCaw, seconded by Councillor Sandison. All in favor, it's carried. We'll deal with bylaws, and if it's okay, I'll deal with the numbers. So first reading of bylaws, 2022-119, 120, 121, 122, 123, 124, 125, 126, and 127. Moved by Councillor Alsop, seconded by Councillor Feeney. All in favor, it's carried. Second reading of bylaws, 2022-119, 120, 121, 122, 123, 124, 125, 126, and 127. Moved by Councillor McCaw, seconded by Councillor Alsop. Any discussion on any of those bylaws? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, it's carried. And then third and final reading of bylaws number 2022-119, 120, 121, 122, 123, 124, 125, 126, and 127. Moved by Councillor Sandison, seconded by Councillor Alsop. All in favor, it's carried. New business, and on Friday, Director McDonald sent out some information regarding the police facility cladding and window replacements. And so there's a new business motion coming that the tender submission from All Professional Trades, Inc. in the total amount of $171,387.10 be accepted for the installation of EFIS cladding and window replacements along the Belleville Police Services North Wall. This being the lowest qualified quotation received, that the Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to sign the acceptance agreement on behalf of the Corporation of the City of Belleville, and that the City Clerk be authorized to affix the corporate seal. Moved by Councillor McCaw, seconded by Councillor Feeney. Any questions or discussion on this? Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, just a comment. When we remember when this was brought forward, there was many different estimates what this would cost us to fix, and it's come in well under our original estimates, which is good to see that it's going to solve the problem there with the coldness or the heat, whatever it might be, and it's a lot lower than our first estimate. So congratulations.
Good. Okay, anyone else? So, you're right, Councillor Thompson, and there's existing funding from the original funding that we provided for the station, and so that's not that's how it's being covered. All in favor? It's carried. Any other new business? Councillor Sandison.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've got two items. First, I'd like to thank the residents who have reached out to me regarding safety concerns for the children at Foxborough School due to a lack of sidewalk there on Ashley Street. I understand from talking to them, it's come up a few times, and it is a complex issue, but it's also a busy spot. Certainly at times with the school buses and cars dropping off and picking up children. So to that end, I discussed it with General Manager Joe Reed and Director of Engineering Steve Ashton. And the work that's involved may require the movement of even a hydro pole or two, curb and gutter and storm pipe, which may be required to go through an EA process. So I raise it today just to ask that it be given consideration and priority in the development of the upcoming 2023 capital budget. The second item is homelessness, and homelessness issues are increasing. On one side, we're being asked to fill the need to assist due to the growing numbers in our city. And on the flip side of the issue is that we're seeing an increased safety risk to our children, parents, and grandparents. I personally have received, and I'm sure we all have, a significant amount of feedback over the last month, and they're all related to safety concerns, and it's not just Bridge Street. It's Walmart and all the places in between. When a 13-year-old child cannot walk downtown on the south side of Bridge Street without being harassed, we as a council need to take heed and take action. And this is not an isolated case, this is a daily occurrence. Our number one priority has to be the safety of our residents, and while this is a compassionate council, The longer we delay, the greater the risk. So I have discussed these concerns with Councillor McCaw as a rep on the Police Services Board to see what options are available or may be available to improve safe travel for pedestrians. And I'm sure most of us are hearing the same concerns from residents. This past weekend, I attended the grand opening of the Field of Ability, which was a great event. But when I got home, I received a phone call, and it was from a parent whose 13-year-old child had their bike stolen at Walmart, and it was suspected it was a homelessness person that had stolen the bike, which had great sentimental value to the family. So the parent actually drove out to Walmart and approached a homeless woman that she saw there and asked for her assistance. So the woman was able to locate the bike because we've got a sort of a gathering out behind Walmart, and she returned it. And for her efforts, she was assaulted by the suspected thief. And again, this is not an isolated case. Like, we've got problems in our city. And we've had deputations come before us. We know the numbers are increasing. We know there's only so much housing that's available at Grace Inn and other facilities. So we all recognize it's a complex issue. But when the safety of our residents is at stake, we need, and I'll use the word, we need to pivot and come up with an alternate course of action. And I'd sort of like to open this up for just general discussion. Thank you.
Well, Councillor Sandison, unless there's a specific motion, we won't be discussing it generally. We talk about it when we have items of business. This is a business meeting, and if you have a recommendation or a proposal to bring forward under new business, we can deal with it. But otherwise, we've heard your comments, and you know, again, this is not a situation that's unique in Belleville. We're not the only place in Ontario or in Canada that's dealing with increased levels. This is a complex issue. We've heard a lot this term, especially this year, about organizations that are assisting and providing help. They've seen an escalation in some mental health cases, which also comes with some violence and some harassment. But we also know that tonight there will be vacant rooms available for people to help to get them off the street, be able to provide assistance, and they will go unused. And so again, you know, whether this is Brockville or Belleville or Trenton or Peterborough or Kingston or Toronto or Ottawa, this is a problem that's plaguing all of Ontario. And you know, and we've spoken about it at length this term already. And so unless there's a motion that will be seconded, we can have discussion. Otherwise, we'll take your comments under advisement.
Okay, so the discussion is about safety of our residents. And I'm not aware that this council has taken any action on safety of our residents. We've taken action on warming center. We've taken action on providing shelter for homeless. But I don't see where we are trying to influence or create a solution to deal with what I see as an increasing safety issue for our kids. So, thank you.
Okay. I do have to do that Quinte conservation motion under new business, but is there anything else that someone would like to talk about under new business before I move to that motion? Okay, so there's a motion that Belleville City Council support the continued delivery of Category 2 and 3 programs by Quinte Conservation, and that we direct municipal staff to work with Quinte Conservation staff on a memorandum of understanding and cost apportionment agreement development to be presented to Council in early 2023. That's the motion, moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Kelly. That's the motion that Mr. McNevin gave us. I think that it's a good thing for us to direct staff to deal with this, because there'll be a number of things in Category 2 and Category 3 that Quinte Conservation may be doing now that we may not agree with in terms of funding it separately, but we'll allow them to go through and come back with a recommendation. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Okay, we're good for new business, I think. All right, we'll now move to motions. And we have the motion from Councillor McCaw. Did everyone has a copy of this motion that was passed out? So Councillor McCaw made a motion at the a notice of motion at the last meeting, and since that time we've had some discussions. She's spoken to Mr. McDonald, and what you have before you is a little cleaner version of the motion. I believe it is consistent with the intent of what the motion was at the last meeting, so I'm going to allow this motion to be the one that will be moved, and then if seconded, we'll have discussion on it. And so Councillor McCaw is moving this motion, seconded by Councillor Sandison. Councillor McCaw, you can stand up and give us your comments on this.
Okay, do you need me to read the motion?
If you would
now?
like to, I
Sure.
think that might be a good idea,
Okay.
just to make sure everybody is on the same page.
Sure. So the motion slightly amended with wording after some discussions with Director Ashton as well as Fire Chief Monique Belair. So the motion is now a motion for council to give direction to staff to investigate all legal options available relating to the operation of room rental, rooming houses, and low-density residential neighborhoods. These options shall include the following. 1, the requirement that anyone renting out more than 2 rooms to unrelated individuals within a low-density residential zoning be required to have a license. Number 2, anyone renting more than 2 rooms with a low-density residential zoning be mandated to have the home fire inspected annually to the fire safety standards equal to and or consistent with Section 9.3 of the Ontario Fire Code. And the third part and final part to it is that it be mandated that any property in a low-density residential zoning renting out more than 2 rooms or being rented as a rooming house, boarding house, be owner-occupied at all times with annual verification submitted at the time of annual license renewal. So speaking to that, I just have a few comments about it, and I'm sure we've all been party to many conversations with various residents in various areas, some very specific and frequent to the same area. Low-density single-family home neighborhoods were designed as that. They were designed as single-family neighborhoods with single-family homes. Given the current increase in the rooming, boarding homes creeping into the low-density residentially zoned neighborhoods, we are noting, or I am noting anyway, that these properties may not be operating with safety in mind, not to mention continued increases in bylaw complaints surrounding parking, garbage, debris, and noise. Respectfully, you have all received these complaints, and I personally receive, I'm going to guess, on average, 2 a week, and sometimes more than that. The overcrowding of individuals in homes, including basements, which are not meant for occupation, create a potential problem with egress in a serious fire situation. Many times there are issues with being able to safely exit a building engulfed in flames due to inadequate exits as well as inadequately sized windows. Again, this is based on the fact that these homes really are designed as single-family homes, not room rentals. In multi-unit dwellings, it is mandatory that units are retrofitted and inspected for fire, ensuring adequate fire separation egress, the presence of fire extinguishers, self-closing mechanisms, smoke, carbon monoxide detectors, and sprinkler systems where warranted. And that's in your basic R4, duplex, triplex, and beyond. In the case of the unregistered room rental, rooming or boarding homes, there is no inspection and they often fly beneath the radar, as we all know, until either we have a complaint or until there's an unfortunate tragedy that could occur. Our current zoning bylaw does allow for up to 5 unrelated individuals occupying a single-family residence. I'm personally finding instances of many more than that.
I've seen some as high as 12 people occupying a residence, depending on the size of the residence. So maybe a 4-bedroom home may occupy 12 residents. I've witnessed, I guess, approximately 10 cars in some of these locations where these rooming homes are, because each guest, I don't want to call them tenants because they really aren't, each guest or roomer has a car. So there's not adequate parking, therefore they're parking on the lawn, they're parking on the street, they're blocking sidewalks, blocking roads, and many other places. So we need to have the ability to take steps to ensure the safety for these roomers or guests, as well as accountability for individuals who purchase properties for the room rental purpose. Accountability for those who fail to maintain their properties, and accountability for those individuals who have roomers or guests that continually disrupt the neighborhoods to which they reside. Licensing would offer us the opportunity to know where these properties are located so that we may ensure fire safety above all and adherence to applicable bylaws. Having homes inspected annually for fire inspection ensures continued safety for these room tenants. Don't want to call them tenants, so roomers or guests. After consultation with Chief Belair, she was able to provide me with further information obtained from a highly qualified individual by the name of Sean McKibben. Sean McKibben was a former fire inspector with the City of Toronto, as well as a fire inspector in Oakville as well. He had a wealth of information in the email on this matter. And I'll just read you one excerpt from what was contained in the email, because I think it's important. Being a fire inspector in Toronto, I can say that performing an annual inspection within a rooming house does make them safer. Every year we found new fire code violations at all the rooming houses. It was pretty rare not to find something. So this is coming from someone as qualified as a former inspector, fire inspector for City of Toronto. And lastly, mandating owner occupation ensures the property is maintained to avoid degradation of that property itself and neighborhoods to which they reside. It allows a local point of contact in an emergency situation and also ensures accountability. In most circumstances, properties are best maintained by the owners who reside there, and we've seen that. Having owner occupation also ensures that individuals renting the rooms are not disrupting neighbors, they're acting safely within the residence, and the home is continually kept in compliance with applicable fire regulation as spelled out in the Ontario Fire Code. I've been in many homes over the years as a realtor, and I can't tell you how many times I've been in homes where renters, roomers, tenants have pulled the fire alarms, smoke alarms, out of the ceiling, or smoke detectors, or carbon monoxide detectors, right out of the residence because it beeps. They don't want to replace the batteries. So in doing so, what that does is the owner of that property doesn't even know that there's a potential hazard there that could happen. So the motion doesn't restrict the current zoning bylaw. This motion does not seek to do that. So the current zoning bylaw still allows, and always will allow at this point, unless it's changed on some other level, to 5 unrelated individuals living within a property. And we're not looking to do anything other than to enhance it. If the current rooming, rental, and boarding homes are already complying with zoning bylaws, then this doesn't do anything more than add a layer of safety and a layer of accountability. There have been enough concerned citizens to come forward, and one is recently today. I had a meeting with her this morning. She's been following this quite closely. It's been happening in her neighborhood. She's even so much as offered to assist in drafting up a rooming house agreement, much like what she has studied and is used widely distributed through the United States. So this is something that was offered to me from actually one of our residents. You know, I'm sure there's much more to say about it, but we all know the situation. Thanks for considering it, and you know, looking for support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCaw. Discussion on this. Councillor Carr.
Yes, thank you. You know, at first blush, I don't object to the scope and the goals here with this particular motion. If I could, through you to Councillor McCaw, is your intent then to have staff, I see your motion includes give direction to staff to investigate all legal options. Is the expectation that staff would come back with another report outlining what can and can't be done, all the options, including the fee structure. Is that your intent of your motion?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thanks, Councillor McCaw, for raising this tonight, and I know you've done some homework, and I just wanted to add to it. I'm with Councillor Carr on this, that city staff will come back and kind of give us more information on how this could be broken down and workable for the city. You touched on it's 5 non-family residents in a home. I think, and I agree with you, we all receive information or letters or phone calls about this particular issue for the last several years. I'll just give you an update on something I was involved with. Labor Day Monday, I met with 2 individuals that came to Belleville 2019 and 2020, both Loyalist College grads. They showed me an app where there were 81 students, international students, that were without a place on Labor Day Monday. I read the comments. They were desperate for a place. Many were still in Brampton at family, friends, relatives, waiting to get a place in Belleville. And I asked them, I went to a home where there's 15 in Belleville. We drove around and they showed me some of the hot spots, if you will. The students that are there, or if they're working in our community, they don't like it one bit. They wish there was a 5 non-family rule in the home. But these homes are owned by some locals, but outside interests as well. And as a foreign student coming to Canada, I asked them why they put up with it, to the students. And I've said this before. They're nervous. They don't know their rights. They got a roof over their head. And they're for the first time away from home in a long way. They don't feel that they have anybody working with them. They feel alone on an island. And they're paying anywhere from $400 to $450. And these homeowners that have 15 people in their home, it's unbelievable that they would do that. And the living conditions, I've seen it firsthand. These homes with 10, 11, 15 kids, students, there's fighting in the home. All of that stuff goes on. It's not something they're loving and embracing and can't wait to get home and have a pool party. It's not how they're living. They just don't feel that they have any rights, or they're afraid to speak up, or nobody's going to go to bat for them. So I appreciate you doing this. This comes back to an ethics, moral, and how you can treat another human being and take money that way. Like, I wouldn't let that happen to my children in Ottawa or Toronto. And the same for Councillor Carr or Feeney or yourself, Sanderson, Mr. Alsop in 15 years when his kids go away to university, Councillor Thompson. That wouldn't happen. But continuously, since we've been on council since 2018, this continues to be a story. And for those who are making money off the international students, and they don't have to be from India or anywhere else, there's other individuals that are starting over. I was in one of the homes back last January, and there was a gentleman that spent some time in behind bars and was starting another chapter in his life, and he was in that home too, because that's all he could afford, the $350 or $400. It's wrong. It's an ethics thing, moral thing, but we'll see where city staff come back with this. Thank you for raising it.
Anyone else on this item? Councillor Alsop.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and I do want to commend Councillor McCaw for bringing this forward, because I think it touches on a number of issues that we have in this community. One of which, of course, being the comportment of these dwellings, being overrun. I actually purchased a house a year and a half ago, a 3-bedroom house that had 7 people living in it, predominantly international students, and I can tell you that the neighborhood threw a party for me when I bought it. That there was noxious weed issues and noise issues, parking issues, all sorts of things that do go along with too many people being in one house. And as Councillor Kelly has pointed out, it's largely exploitative to the individuals that are living in the house. So if it's not good for the neighborhood, and it's not good for the people living in the house, then it seems to me that the only person it's good for is the person that's charging the rents in that environment. So I do have some concerns, about licensing and our ability to effectively police this and our ability to have bylaw, really go out and give this some teeth, as we found with the STA bylaw. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here. I believe the number of registrants was 6 last time we talked. And I know that there's more than 6 in the city, so I'm concerned that this may fall into a similar situation. However, I think it's worth looking into and directing staff to see what legal options are available. So I will be supporting the motion today.
All right, anyone? Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, and I'm going to support the motion, but the downside of this will be with college that brings in the international students. Because a lot of these rooming homes now are being residents in them with the international students, good or bad. So there is and how we get to this, and hopefully through the staff report, there's some work with Loyalist College on trying to develop more rooms for these international students, if we're going to bring the international students in, which Loyalist College needs. And the people that are charging this, I know a person that's paying $850 for one room in one house, with more than one person in that. And it's not in a low density area, but maybe it is in a low density area. I have to find out when you talk about low density. But my concern is we need to work with Loyalist College on trying to solve this housing issue with the students, along with the safety issues with our residents, because other people that are living in that street is really a big concern. And there's one street on the west side of Belleville, and I can't think of the name of the street, and it's really not fair to bring it up anyways. There's a number of homes that are owned by outside people, and the residents in those homes is causing a problem. And I get phone calls from 2 houses in that street quite regularly. What are you going to do to cut the noise down? How are you going to stop the garbage being piled up? And unfortunately, I commend for bringing this forward. Hopefully we can get some meat to it, and hopefully we can maybe address the side issues with this issue also through. So I'm certainly going to support it.
Could anyone else on this item? Okay, so, I too, I think I agreed with everything that has been said around the table. This is a problem that is affecting more and more of our residents. It's changing the nature of neighborhoods and what we have seen happen. And it's unfair to people who continue to live family dwellings, single detached homes, or multi-residential dwellings that they're living in families. So, and I think this is entirely consistent, this resolution asking for the legal way that we can regulate the number of people that are staying in a dwelling. Whoever would have thought that we'd have to decide how many people would be in a family? And certainly the nature of families is changing. And so the old definition of being related is no longer applicable. But, there are some who are abusing these new definitions, and it becomes very difficult. Councillor Alsop referred to short-term accommodations, and I think what we're doing here is entirely consistent with what we're doing with short-term accommodators. And I think our message coming out of our council is that short-term accommodators who are not licensed, people who are overcrowding housing, we're coming for you. We will take all the legal steps we can to make it difficult for you to operate in our city. We're going to ensure that we protect not just the vulnerable people that are being exploited, but also the neighbors and other residents in those communities. And so I support this as well, and I thank Councillor McCaw for bringing it forward. I think we're good there, so I'm going to call the question. All in.
Recorded vote, please.
Councillor McCaw has asked for a recorded vote, so I'll ask Director McDonald to go ahead and do so.
Councillor Sanderson.
Yes.
Councillor Thompson.
Yes.
Councillor Alsop.
Yes.
Councillor Carr.
Yes.
Councillor Feeney.
Yes.
Councillor Kelly,
Yes.
Mayor Panchak,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor McCaw. Notice of motions. Anyone have any notice of motions? Then we're at announcements. Anyone have any announcements they'd like to make? Go ahead, Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, I got two, thank you. First of all, good news is that we have hired an accessibility coordinator for the city of Belleville, which started on Tuesday or Monday. If I may be corrected to that, it might have been the following Tuesday. I've tried to make contact with her. She's working from home, and we hope to have our first accessibility meeting with the new coordinator shortly. And my second announcement, I was a pleasure to do the opening of the community bake shop on South Pinnacle Street. It's a community bake shop that emphasizes diversity and inclusion, and she hires strictly students to give them an experience to go on, and it's really almost a non-profit bake shop. It's a new concept. I commend Sharon for bringing this forward. It was a pleasure to do the opening, but the emphasis is on youth. That's where her focus is. Youth sometimes that have challenges and able to learn a trade in the bake shop business to go on further. But the emphasis this lady wants to it's students, diversity, and inclusion. And it was a pleasure to do the opening. And also I had a number of councillors that had joined me. Councillor Kelly was there, Councillor Carr was there, Councillor Feeney was there, Councillor Alsep wasn't able to make it, and Councillor Millette was there. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Thompson. Councillor Alsop.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say I had a great time at Belleville's first ever water sports fair this weekend. It was from Saturday 11 to 4 for non-motorized water sports. It was great. It was done in conjunction with the World Rowing Tour, which was passing through. And it was wonderful to be there. It was great to see everybody out enjoying the waterfront, and hopefully we have more in the future.
Thank you. Anyone? Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. Just briefly, the City of Belleville and Belleville Transit are hosting transit service agencies from across Canada who use concept technology for their transit buses, and that starts tomorrow. It runs from September 13th to the 15th. There's a delegation of 50 people from across the country, as well as a team from Concept headquarters in Sweden, which will be gathering to review the technology, learn about service improvements, hear about upcoming releases, and learn techniques to make the most of the service. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, I wanted to just follow up too on Councillor Thompson. It was a great morning at the community bake shop, and I left the bake shop with an apple pie. It was the second best apple pie I've ever had. My mother's still number one. So. I just wanted to say too, this Saturday was the Field of Ability grand opening in Belleville. Lisa Ann Chesser and her team, all volunteers, a lot of years working to make this beautiful addition to the city. And what I took from it with the Challenger baseball from the players was the smiles, the energy, the city being really inclusive, and they had so much fun, and you could see their brothers and sisters, and mom and dad, and aunts and uncles and grandparents all embracing that special day Saturday here in Belleville. So well done for everybody involved in that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'll do my announcements, and then we'll have adjournment. So I'd like to start off by proclaiming September the 18th to 24th as National Forest Week. And the theme this year is Canada's Forest, Solutions for a Changing Climate, which will highlight the inextricable link between us and our forests. From local communities to vast woodlands, we will be celebrating the nature-based solutions for climate change mitigation and adaptation provided by Canada's forests. Forests can help reduce climate change by trapping and storing greenhouse gases. Trees also soften the impacts of a changing climate and extreme weather by moderating temperatures and protecting biodiversity. This year's theme showcases the importance of sustainable forest practices, research, conservation, engineered wood products, and innovative technologies to provide solutions from Canadian forests. By emphasizing the role of trees and their benefits, as we deal with climate change. Our goal is to foster an enthusiasm for our forests and invite individuals to engage in sustainable action. I'd also like to proclaim September 19th to 25th as Rail Safety Week in Belleville. Every year, more than 2,100 North Americans are killed or seriously injured because of unsafe behavior around tracks and trains. Every one of these incidents and deaths are preventable. By looking out for each other and working together, we can help keep our community safe and prevent injuries and fatalities on or near railway property. Safety is a core value at Canadian National, Canadian Pacific, and Via Rail, and these companies continue to take all necessary steps to protect their employees, communities, customers, vendors, and partners with the objective of reducing rail-related injuries and fatalities to zero. Our rail companies safely serve their customers and keep the economy moving. They remain committed in their efforts to educate the public on rail safety. The Bridge Street Bridge and Belleville sign will be lit red this week of September 19th to 25th, to recognize that week. It's been a busy time since our last meeting on the beginning of August, and on Wednesday, the August 10th and 24th, I was so pleased to be at the Sparky Splash Days of Summer, which was a United Way fundraiser at both the West Riverside Splash Pad and the Kinsman Splash Pad, put on by the Belleville Fire and Emergency Service Department. Thank you so much for putting on this fire safety education for our young people. On August the 11th, I was pleased to provide the annual address to the Probus Club of Belleville for the first time in person since the COVID-19 pandemic. My address touched on the actions the city took throughout the pandemic and provided an update on capital projects and development in the city over the past 2.5 years. On Friday, August the 12th, I was joined by Public Affairs Manager for Canadian National Rail, Daniel Salvatore, for a tour of the city to discuss ongoing CN projects and municipal projects dealing with CN across the city. And I followed this up on August the 18th when I was joined by Stacey Patnode, Manager of Government Affairs and Communications at Canadian Pacific, also for a tour of the city. We visited rail crossings and discussed the city's growth, including the active transportation need requirements at crossings. From August the 14th to the 17th, Councillors Sean Kelly, Councillor Bill Sanderson, Councillor Garnet Thompson, and Councillor Chris Millette and I, along with CEO Rod Bove, attended the Municipalities of Ontario 2022 conference back in person in Ottawa, along with more than 1,700 participants from across Ontario. And it was great to be back, and there were key topics that we discussed. We've heard a little bit about that this evening from different people who learned things at the conference, and it was good to work with our colleagues again together. I want to say a special thank you to Councillor Alsop for representing me on Monday, August the 15th, joining community members at the Quinte Sports and Wellness Centre for a flag raising for India Independence Day. The day marked the end of British rule in 1947 and the establishment of a free and independent Indian nation. And on Monday the 15th, also, Councillor Kelly McCaw brought greetings on behalf of myself and Council to the Quinte Sports and Wellness Centre as they launched their week of celebration marking the 10th anniversary of when that expanded facility was opened. On Wednesday, August the 17th, I was so pleased to have the opportunity to take the daughters of former Belleville Mayor Ben Cork, who was mayor from 1975 to 1980, to see the new Ben Cork footbridge crossing the Moira River. Elizabeth Cork Conroy, who now lives in New Zealand, and Marianne Cork Adams, who now lives in Edmonton, were both here, and they were so glad to be able to have this advanced tour as they are unable to return for the official bridge opening planned for later this month. Former Mayor George Zagoras and his council dedicated the bridge to former Mayor Ben Cork on October 2003. Also, the weekend leading up to August the 19th, I was happy to present Arlene Colcuzzi, the Executive Director of Big Brothers and Big Sisters, with a check for $15,000 to help their support RibFest. RibFest was on August the 19th, and it was wonderful to be back dealing with it. That finger-licking event was a great success for the organizers, especially for the Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Prince Edward County. On Thursday, August the 18th, Councillors Alsop, Millette, Sanderson, Thompson and I were pleased to attend the ribbon-cutting and dedication ceremony for the Enrichment Center for Mental Health's 3 new transitional homes located in the Altogether Housing Corporation property on Great St. James Street. On Saturday, August the 27th, we had a wonderful opportunity to host the Professional Discus Golf Association and Ontario Disc Sports Association tournament called Riverside Rumble here at our disc golf course. And this was the very first sanctioned tournament at this newly installed Riverside West course here. I want to congratulate Rolly Tipper. I visited him on August the 19th to congratulate him on receiving the Platinum Queen's Jubilee Pin in recognition of his many years of dedication to the community. Rolly was the first individual to approach me regarding the tribute to Dr. Collop, which is now along our waterfront trail, and he has been involved with countless other initiatives in our city. On Saturday, August the 20th, the Canada's Skyhawks, our military parachute company, wowed spectators at Westwicks Park with their live plane jumping. They jumped out of a plane for live for that demonstration, and it was great to be there with Councillors Millette and Carr and the great crowd that came out to be able to join and enjoy that wonderful show. On later that day, on August the 20th, on a warm day, Councillors Kelly and Councillor Thompson and I enjoyed a beautiful afternoon at Glanmore National Historic Site for the annual Mayor's Summer Garden Party. And this event promoted the importance of arts and culture and heritage in our community and encouraged visitors to take in the beauty of Glanmore. Had a nice visit on August the 20th from Suna Chung, who is a resident of Gunpo, South Korea. And Suna was visiting. She was involved in a previous visit to Gunpo, and she was visiting Belleville, and we had an opportunity to present her with a certificate, welcoming her to our wonderful city, and it looks like they're going to spend a little bit of time in Canada to learn English and French, and so it was wonderful to meet her and her family. On August the 22nd, I was pleased to meet with the new acting president of Loyalist College, Mark Kirkpatrick, along with Vice President of External Relations and Business Development, Jeremy Lauren. The meeting was to discuss the future potential projects involving the provincial government and the private sector in our community, as well as the expansion of programs and services that Loyalist College has undertaken. On August the 24th, Clay Williams and the Canal Pursuit Productions team came to Belleville, and I joined them at Lions Park as they made their way through Belleville. Canal Pursuit is a 700-kilometer run roughly following the Trent-Severn Canal from Port Severn to Trenton and stopping at each of the 88 locks along the way to Ottawa. And they stopped in Belleville. The Belleville portion of the run was completed by the search and rescue team from CFB Trenton. I mentioned earlier during one of the deputations, but on Friday, August the 25th, I was so honored to represent the city at the Children's Foundation 22nd Annual Reach for Success Youth Awards at the Grand here in Belleville. These awards celebrate some of the amazing youth in our community and recognize their personal milestones. I want to give a special mention to Devin Rattan Stokes, who will be attending Queen's University this fall, taking psychology. And congratulations to Devin for his hard work and being accepted to Queen's and showing that everything is possible for everyone. On August the 31st, Councillors Millette, Thompson, and Sanderson and I were on site to celebrate the beginning of Phase 2 of the reconstruction project for Orchard Drive, where we took part in the groundbreaking ceremony that marks the beginning of construction with anticipated completion by late August next year. And also on August the 31st, Councillors Kelly and Millette joined me that afternoon as we represented the city at the International Overdose Awareness Day at Market Square. And that event is a collaboration between Addictions and Mental Health Services, Hastings Prince Edward, and Hastings Prince Edward Public Health in partnership with Belleville Quinte West Community Health Centre and the United Way, Hastings and Prince Edward. And the event was designed to create awareness of the current drug crisis in our region and to provide information about the harms that stigma creates for people experiencing substance abuse. On Friday, September the 2nd, Councillors Alsop, Millette, Sanderson, and Thompson, and I believe Councillors Alsop, Millette, and Thompson are on the board of the Enrichment Centre for Mental Health. We were there to celebrate provincial MPP for the Bay of Quinte riding Todd Smith, announcing $546,364 in funding for the Enrichment Centre's Growing Independent Futures for Tomorrow, or called the GIFT program, through the Ontario Skills Development Fund. The GIFT program assists vulnerable people overcoming barriers to enter the job market and securing well-paying jobs within our region. This funding will support 10 cohorts in 4 weeks of training supporting as many as 200 different individuals. In addition to the gift funding, MPP Smith announced that the Enrichment Centre will be receiving another $155,200 grant through the Ontario Trillium Foundation Resilient Communities Fund. Also, on that day, September 2nd, Councillors Alsop, Sanderson, Carr, Feeney, and I were pleased to be right here in Belleville City Council chambers to present a $25,000 check to the Not Alone Team Quinte to start their tiny home project. These funds will allow the team to develop a concept plan for a tiny home community, and we've asked for a report to be back to Council by the end of the year. Last week, on Tuesday, September the 6th, I was so proud to be on site when Habitat for Humanity broke ground on their new build, a third build that they've started here in Belleville at 639 Sydney Street. Again, this is the third that our council this term has provided to Habitat for Humanity after they haven't had any land donated to them from the city since before the year 2000. And this site at 639 Sydney Street will be home to a brand new duplex, which will house 2 families once complete. Construction is expected to be completed in 2023, and families will be moved in by next year, by next July. Now, the other project, the fourth project that we provided land to Habitat for, is of course the old police station, the former police station, and that will be home to a 66-unit affordable housing facility, and we are looking forward to having that move along. Last week also, Councillor Kelly, Millette, and I were pleased to represent the city at the launch of the Community Butt Recycling Program. Cigarette butts contain toxins and plastic, which breaks down into microplastics and enter our water systems and the environment, but they can be recycled into plastic wood products to produce benches and other products, and we were pleased to be there with individuals to collect it. Last Wednesday, Councillor Carr and I were pleased to join owner Jason Rowe for the official grand reopening celebration of Rowe's General Store at 184 Canafton Road North. Rowe's has been in business for 34 years, with Jason's father originally purchasing the business in 1988. In 2019, an armed robbery took place at the store, resulting in Jason sustaining serious, life-threatening injuries. Since then, and with the support of the community, Jason Rowe has been able to get back, reopen the newly renovated store, and it was such a pleasure to be there to join him on that day and to celebrate his 34 years in business. Later that day, Councillors Alsop, Millette, and I were pleased to join Transition Bike Parks Incorporated as they broke ground on the first phase of the new BMX pump track at West Riverside Park, and we're looking forward to that project being finished, the first phase this year. I want to thank Councillors Alsop, Millette, Thompson for representing the City of Belleville at the Wing Commanders Golf Tournament this year at CFB Trenton, and they were participating along with City Staff Member Mark Coyle. The reason I couldn't participate was I was previously committed to the 2022 Belleville Professional Firefighters Association Golf Tournament in support of the Christmas Toy Drive. And after a 2-year hiatus, the tournament was back, and I thank Belleville Police Service Chief Mike Callahan, Emergency Medical Services Deputy Chief Mike Slatter, and Constable Matt Code for joining me as we provided support to the BPFFA. Lastly, this was a very busy weekend with so much going on in the City of Belleville. On Saturday, Councillors Sanderson, Kelly, Feeney, and I were pleased to be at the Field of Ability grand opening. Councillor Kelly spoke about it, but the City of Belleville is now home to an amazing, fully accessible, barrier-free facility where people of all abilities can participate in baseball and have equal opportunity to reach their full potential. It was such a pleasure to be joined by MPP Todd Smith, Field of Ability Committee Chair Lisa Newman-Cheshire, and the Jays Care Foundation representatives, as well as our friend and our neighbor, Quinte West Mayor Jim Harrison. On Saturday, I was also able to attend the first annual cricket tournament held at the Rotary Centennial Park here in Belleville. What a wonderful group of cricket enthusiasts from all over Ontario, including 5 teams of players from Belleville alone. It was wonderful. And I was also pleased to be the guest of honor at the Quinte Malalay Association and the first Onam Festival held here in Belleville. It is a great privilege to welcome this community to our city and thank them for their contributions. And later that night, I was pleased to bring greetings on behalf of the city at the kickoff for the World Rowing Tour. This was the 51st annual World Rowing Tour, and the third time it's been hosted in Canada. The group of 50 participants from 12 different countries will explore the Bay of Quinte and the Thousand Islands region. On Sunday, September 11th, yesterday, Councillors Sandison, Kelly, Feeney, Millette, and Alsap and I joined first responders and members of the community, as well as other esteemed guests, for a very special ceremony at Fire Station Number 1. We gathered, as we have in the past years, to remember the victims, families, and surviving first responders whose lives were forever changed on September 11th, 2001. But in addition to recognize the anniversary of 9/11, the new Fallen Firefighter Memorial Garden and Monument was unveiled during the ceremony to remember members of the Belleville Fire and Emergency Services who have lost their lives in the line of duty. A wonderful tribute to those who gave their lives in protecting our community, and we were joined by so many individuals. Thank you to everyone who attended and helped out with the event, and we look forward to a full monument being completed later this year. And with that, I'm looking for a resolution that bylaw number 2022-128, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held on September 12th, 2022, be ready first, second, and third time and finally passed this 12th day of September 2022. Councillor Alsop and Councillor Feeney, all in favor, it's carried. Motion to adjourn, Councillor Alsop and Councillor Carr, all in favor, it's carried. Thank you, everybody.